Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto learns Heavenly Dragon Slayer magic. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. And check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Run. 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 This was all that could be thought as a woman made her way down the mud-covered road in the rain as she looked back to see the light of the crowd chasing after her, yelling at her to stop. But she wouldn't listen. She had to keep going, for her sake, for her husband's sake, for her son's sake. She kept running until she saw a path going off the road and to the sacred cave that was forbidden to enter under any circumstances. Thinking that they wouldn't follow her there, she quickly took the path and ran uphill towards the cave. As the mob got to the path, they searched for her and looked towards the path. Quickly, some of you check up there now. The apparent leader of the mob stated as she brushed some pink hair out of her eyes. One of the others in the crowd said otherwise. Are you crazy? There's no way I'm going up there, and beside, not even she would dare go there in fear of losing that child of hers. She is as good as dead if she did go. The women couldn't find a problem wrong with the man's logic and just kept walking forward, determined to find that woman and her path to the good life. Meanwhile at the cave, the woman walked into the dark, damp space and leaned against the wall and tried to catch her breath. Seeing the woman more clearly, she had a slender but feminine build, fair skin, violet eyes, fiery red hair with strands that framed both sides of her face, and a black clip that parts her hair to the left, keeping it out of her eyes. She wore an outfit consisting of a high-collared, sleeveless blouse under a long, loose-fitting dress. The blouse was white while the dress was green. She also wore a wristband that was black dark blue on her left wrist and simple sandals on her now muddy feet. In her arms was a small bundle wrapped in a blue blanket that was still as a rock, but if you could see more closely it was slowly rising up and down like it was breathing. She looked down to the bundle in her arms and had a small, weak smile on her face. In it was a little baby with blonde hair and some kind of whisker marks on the sides of his face. This was her son, Naruto. She held him closer to her chest as she remembered what those people were planning on doing with him and couldn't help but cry a little as she thought of how her village, the one she had lived in and trusted in, would try and do such a thing to both her and her husband. While this was going on, she never noticed a mark on her arm glow as she snuggled her baby into her arms. As she continued to hug her son for all that it was worth, a hand placed itself on her shoulder, making her instantly flinch in contact and pull a sword out of thin air, ready to protect her son from anyone. "Kushina, it's me." A masculine voice spoke as he put his hands up in defense. There was a fairly tall, fair-skinned man, bright blue eyes and spiky blonde hair that also had jaw-length bangs framing either side of his face, making him look very handsome. He wore a black long-sleeved top with 2 bands on each sleeve and a green zip-up vest over top. He also wore a slightly saggy pair of blue pants with blue sandals on his feet. He also wore some kind of short-sleeved coat with orange flames lining the bottom and the symbol for the wizard saints on the back. The woman, now named Kushina, just stared with wide eyes as tears started to form in her eyes. "Minato-kun." She yelled as she rushed into his arm, being careful not to hurt Naruto as she did. Minato just hugged his wife and son as Kushina cried her into his shoulder as he rubbed her back and whispered soothing words in her ear. When she finished crying, Kushina looked up towards Minato only to gasp a little as he looked like he hadn't slept in days and took in deep amounts of breath, but during all that he had a smile on his face as his 2 most precious people were safe and sound. "Minato, what happened to you?" Kushina said in a panic as Naruto started to wake and looked up towards both of his parents with curious blue eyes. "It seems that I messed up. I had no idea that the villagers would use poison-laced weapons and I got scratched. I'm so sorry." Minato said as Naruto started to cry, almost knowing what was going to happen to his father. Kushina just looked at Minato with wide eyes as she flinched and clenched her right arm in pain. Minato panicked a little when he saw this. He looked at Kushina's shoulder and saw that she was cut with something that left a purple liquid around the wound. Minato's eyes widened as he knew what it was. "Kushina, don't tell me," he said with a pleading look on his face that only got worse as he saw her looking down, almost ashamed. "I got careless and let my guard down. I was so worried about Naruto that I didn't see one of the blades coming until it hit me. I'm sorry," Kushina said as she looked at Naruto and tried to calm him down. Minato just put his hands on her shoulder and smiled at her the best he could. "It's okay, Kushina, at least Naruto is fine. That's all that matters at the moment, right?" Minato asked as Kushina looked up to him with a small smile on her face and nodded her head slightly, but then gained a worried look on her face as she starts coughing up blood. "Kushina." Minato shouted and tried to look over her, but then fell on his hands and knees as his breathing started to get worse. He knew it was a fast-acting poison, but he didn't think that it would affect him this soon. And judging by how quickly Kushina started to cough up blood with the time he started doing it and how long she was away from him, she must have been hit with a much higher concentration of the stuff than he did. He knew that they will not make it to another village in time to save their son. He knew that Kushina was thinking the same thing as she started to cry while holding Naruto closer to her and did the only he could, he hugged both of them for all it was worth and started crying. They cried for what seemed like hours as they lay on the floor before they looked like they were at the end. With the last of his strength, Minato grabbed both his and Kushina's hands and put them both on Naruto and channeled some of his magic into them. Kushina, I'm going to put some of our magic inside of Naruto so that when he gets older, we will be able to see him when he gets rescued. But how will you know he will be rescued? Kushina whispered out as she began losing her strength. I have faith that someone will come along and save him, I'm sure of it. Minato reassured her and finished the spell, but kept both of their hands on Naruto as he slept quietly. We won't see him for a while, so let's tell Naruto what we want to say to him. Kushina looked towards Minato with a little bit of happiness in her eyes at being able to see her son when he was older, but was saddened that it would take that long to see him. She moved on of her hands and rested it on Naruto's head as she spoke to him. Naruto, don't be a picky eater, eat a lot and grow big and strong. Make sure to bathe every day and stay warm, don't stay up late, get plenty of sleep, plus make friends, you don't need tons, okay, just a few that you can really trust, and your mom was bad at this, but study hard and learn your magic, just everyone is good at some things and not so good at others, so even if things don't go well, don't get depressed. Okay. Make sure you respect your teachers and those senior to you, and be extra careful about loaning and borrowing money, make sure you save money from your mission pay, and don't start drinking until you're 21, too much drink is bad for your body, so drink in moderation, and the most problematic girls. Minato smiled at this part and did a weak chuckle. I'm a girl so I don't really know much about this, but at some point you'll notice girls, and that's normal, just be careful, don't fall for the first girl that comes your way, find someone like me. And don't be like your father who was as dense as a rock when it came to me and my feelings. Hey, and make sure to give me lots of grandbabies to spoil. Huff Naruto, there'll be plenty of hard and painful time ahead, take care of yourself, make sure to have dreams and the confidence to make those dreams come true, so much there's so much sob, there really is so much more I want to tell you, I want to be with you longer. Kushina kept crying as Minato put his hand on top of hers and squeezed it gently. I love you. I'm sorry Minato, I talk too much. Kushina started arguing as Minato cut her off. No, it's alright. Minato looked towards Naruto with tears in his eyes as he was about to say his first and final word to give to his son. Naruto, my words to you as your father is listen to your motor-mouth mother. Minato had a warm smile on his face as he and his wife had tears rolling down their faces and hugged their son tightly between them before closing their eyes and drifting off into an endless slumber. A gentle breeze passed through the cave as two leaves made their way towards the departed family members and their son. Blowing aimlessly through the cave before resting on the hands of the parents, transferring their will to their son. Little did Minato and Kushina know they were both being watched while they said goodbye to their son. At the end of the cave was a large shrine composed of light stone, flanked by 4 small pillars with square sections, one sitting at each edge, being topped by a pair of vertically placed flat carved stones, with small geometrical parts jutting upwards on each summit. On the side nearest to the other stone, and a circular hole being generated by 2 carved semicircles on each stone's inner side. In the middle of the circles was a large rainbow-colored gem that looked like a lizard's eye that was currently shining towards the family. How sad, no hatchling should be born and lose their parents on the same day, and 2 of the most caring and honorable humans I have seen in years. I can tell he will be a strong and noble mage in the future if his parents are anything to go by. I wonder. The eye then shone brighter and magical particles moved towards the family members and seemed to float around them for a few seconds before returning back. Yes, he will be the one. I will make sure that your boy lives, but you won't have to wait all those years to meet with him. The eye then glowed as bright as a star while white magic circle appeared below the family and a pillar of light engulfed all of them. As soon as it started it ended with the family nowhere in sight and the eye's light started to fade before it went out and left the cave dark and damp once again. Dragon Realm Meadow of Memories. Gold. That was the first thing that went through Minato's mind as he woke up lying in a grassy field that was covered in gold. Looking closer at the color he was shocked to see that the field wasn't covered in gold, but the grass itself was gold. Sitting up and rubbing his temples from a migraine he was having, he looked up and widened his eyes in shock at what he saw. The sky was the brightest blue he had ever seen and what seemed like the sun high in the sky, radiating a calm and warming aura that made his soul light up and feel relaxed. But what really made his eyes widen was the large chunks of earth floating around the sky with different climate zones on them and large mountains on almost every one of them. All in all it looked beautiful and a place that made him feel like he was in heaven. Just then Minato remembered everything, the village betraying them, being poisoned by his teacher and predecessor, running away from the village, being with Kushina and Naruto in a cave. Kushina. He shouted as he looked around everywhere for his wife and son, only to calm down a bit when he saw Kushina laying down on the ground, peacefully sleeping as she breathed in and out. Minato slowly made his way over to his wife and gently stroked her hair and whispered in her ear. "Kushina dear, it's time to wake up." 5 more minutes Mina-kun. Kushina mumbled out as she turned away from Minato and snuggled more into the soft grass. Minato just sweat dropped at his wife's actions and started to nudge her awake. "Kushina, now's not the time to be sleeping. You need to wake up." Kushina just moaned in disappointment and sat up and rubbed her eyes. "Why did you have to wake me up Minato? I was having a lovely dream about you, me and Naruto. My baby, where's my baby?" Kushina shouted and looked around frantically as she remembered what happened to them and panicked. "I don't know Kushina, I just woke up now and I have no idea where we are. But I do remember us being poisoned," and Minato trailed off as he looked at the sad and watering eyes of his wife. No Kushina then started to break down crying and mumbling out her poor son and backstabbing villagers taking everything away from her. Minato just hugged her close to him as she gripped onto him for dear life and once again cried for her son's sake. They both stopped however when they felt a large pressure of magical energy weigh them down and a large shadow pass over them. As they looked up they saw something that made them curl back slightly on the ground and prepare their magic in case they needed it. Flying high above them and getting lower by the second was a massive dragon that was slowly making its way towards them and flapping its wings, causing a powerful gust of wind that made both mages cover their eyes and brace themselves so as not to be sent flying backwards. When the dragon had finally landed they got a better look at it and started to sweat at the size of it. It was a western dragon with 4 legs and in silver-white scales all over its body and wings that made them look like a rainbow of colors when the sun reflected off them. Its eyes were blue with slits in them and had golden horns on its head that was fashioned like it was wearing a crown with a diamond gem on its forehead. The creature folded its impressive wings up and looked towards the 2 mages in front of it. "Welcome young mages, my name is Raijin, the first dragon, the supreme dragon king and the dragon god, and you are in the domain of all dragons and the place where dragons ascend when they die in your world. The dragon realm." The dragon said with a voice of nobility and pride. Feeling no hostility towards the dragon they slowly lowered their guard and stood up before the towering figure before them. Hello Raijin-sama, my name is Minato Namikaze and this is my wife Kushina Uzumaki." Both Minato and Kushina bowed towards the dragon and surprised them when he bowed back to them but continued anyway. "I don't mean to be rude or anything, but why are we here?" Raijin nodded before looking at both of them in the eyes and started explaining to them. "Well Minato-san, the reason why you and your wife are both here is simple really, I saw both of you in the cave with your son and decided to help both of you with your son." As soon as the dragon said that both Minato and Kushina were wide-eyed and Kushina asked him. "You know what happened to our son?" She said in a helpful voice as Raijin nodded and signaled for them to follow him. While they were walking Raijin decided to continue talking to them. "I first saw Kushina-san in the cave rushing in with a bundle in her arms, now normally I would just send out a bit of my magical energy and scare away anyone who dares enter my old cave, but then I saw you crying and decided to listen to you and see what was happening. Imagine my surprise when I hear that both of you have been poisoned and were dying right in front of your child all at the hands of your own village, when I heard that I decided to see this for myself." He looked back to see that they were wide-eyed and had their jaws open enough to catch flies and other insects. "When I got to your village I saw an old human saying something about their plan being ruined and some white-hair man claiming to be a super pervert or something, saying that he was going to take a squad out to hunt for both of you." The dragon raised a barely noticeable eyebrow when he saw both of them look murderous but carried on. "I had enough of what was happening and went back to the cave. When I did I heard you Minato-san say that you were going to put both of your magic inside of the boy and say your final words to him. I saw how much you were willing to protect and care for your hatchling that I decided to honor your final wish and look after him." When the dragon finished talking Minato and Kushina were shocked to hear that a being as power as Raijin was willing to do all of this for them but still had one thought on their minds. Raijin-sama Kushina started as the dragon looked towards her. "If that is the case, then why are we here? You said that you would be willing to look after our son, but what did you mean by that?" She questioned as Raijin had a smile on his face that looked downright scary in Kushina and Minato's opinion. "Well that is because Kushina-san, no hatchling deserves to lose their parents the day they are born, especially ones like yourselves." Both Minato and Kushina blushed at the compliment said by the dragon. "So I did you both another favor, I transported both of you as well to this realm in order to raise your son like you wanted to." Both mages stopped in their tracks at what Raijin said and did not move a single step. They both had registered what the great dragon said to them and started to gain big bright smiles on their faces. They could raise their son without any problems at all, no village holding them back, no nosy villages hoping to train or spoil their child, and no backstabbing traitors who would do who knows what in order to gain power for their greedy little hands. Just them and their little bundle of joy. They were so eager to see him that they immediately ran right past Ryujin and headed straight towards where they were heading. Ryujin meanwhile just blinked at the speed displayed by the two mages and just shook his head with a chuckle and walked faster in order to catch up with the pair. Dragon Realm Forest of Fate. The Forest of Fate, one of the most peaceful places in the Dragon Realm and the birthplace of many dragon hatchlings. This was the scene that Minato and Kushina walked into as they saw many baby dragons playing around with each and sending out different roars at each other that did a little destruction to the trees around them. As they came to a clearing in the middle of the forest, they saw a small group of baby dragons crowding around a small patch in the middle. When Minato and Kushina got closer, the hatchlings cleared a way for them and they had tears of happiness in their eyes at what lay in front of them. In a small bundle on top of a small pile of leaves was Naruto, sleeping peacefully as the baby dragon sniffed him and gave looks of curiosity at the new unknown creature that was in front of them. When they saw two other creatures coming towards them with the same scent as the small one in front of them, they moved away from it as Kushina stepped forward and picked Naruto up into her arms. Kushina hugged Naruto for all that it was worth and cried tears of joy at being able to hold her baby boy in her arms again and watch him grow up to be a man before her eyes. She felt a pair of arms wrap around her and Naruto and leaned into it as she knew that too was Minato joining in on the family moment. They stayed like this for a couple of moments before the baby dragon began to play around them and lick their feet, making the pair giggle at the dragon's playfulness. They played with them for a couple of minutes before Ryujin walked into the clearing with another dragon beside him. The dragon was another western dragon with red scales covering its whole body with golden slitted eyes and horns on its head that looked like a crown with a ruby on its head just like Ryujin. Another difference was that the dragon was slightly smaller than Ryujin, but not that much, and had an aura around it that felt Kushina's when she was around Naruto, an aura of motherhood. Well, look at what we have here, these young hatchlings seem to have found some new people to play with. The red dragon said with mirth in its voice that sounded female in nature as she looked towards the laughing couple and their baby as they played with the baby dragons around them. I must agree, Benahim, they do look like they found some new playmates. But I'm afraid that we must cut it short as I have some business to finish with Minato-san and Kushina-san. Ryujin said with some seriousness in his voice as Benahim nodded and moved towards the hatchling and moved them out of the way so that Ryujin could talk to Minato and Kushina. When she had moved them all out of the way, Ryujin walked towards the two mages as they sat together on the ground as Kushina was holding Naruto in her arms and Minato had one of his arms around her. Ryujin sighed as he began talking. Minato, Kushina, I think it's time I told you the main reason I brought you and your child here. Minato and Kushina looked at Ryujin with raised eyebrows. The true reason is that I want him to learn my magic. Both parents had wide eyes at what the dragon just said but managed to get out of their shock quickly. What do you mean, Ryujin-sama, why do you want Naruto to learn your magic? And what exactly is your magic? Minato questioned the dragon god who just sighed and began to explain some things to them. Let me start with this, over 400 years ago, the dragons were the kings of the world and humans were food to the dragons who flew the skies, freely dominating the lands and seas. However, an unknown dragon questioned the reign of the dragons. The latter wanted the dragons and the humans to coexist in the world. The war brewed between the dragons who supported dragon-human coexistence and those who were against the ideology. The war spread chaos through the lands and the dragons were at stalemate. The humans supporting dragons devised a cunning plan. They provided some humans with magic that allowed them to slay dragons, this gave birth to the dragon slayers. These dragon slayers were feared throughout the world as monstrous mages with unknown capabilities and immense potential to become literal gods among normal humans. The plan proved to be very successful as the human supporting dragons gained the upper hand in the war. However, they did not anticipate their fellow dragon slayers' next move. Corrupted by the immense power gifted unto them by the dragon slayers started to slay the dragons on their side. Minato and Kushina gasped at what the dragon slayers did to their own comrades, but they both knew that Ryujin was not finished yet. But there was one man among the dragon slayers who bathed in the blood of too many dragons. He continued to destroy dragons and bathe in their blood until he began to change. Minato didn't like where this story was heading and had a bad feeling about what Ryujin wanted to do with Naruto. His skin turned to scales, his teeth to fangs, his nails turned into claws, he transformed into a dragon himself. A human became a dragon. Kushina gasped as she held Naruto tighter. This particular human proclaimed himself to be the Dragon King and became known as the Black Dragon, or as you might know him. The Black Dragon in the Book of Apocalypse, Acnologia. At the name of the Black Dragon, Minato and Kushina paled and took a step back in both shock and fear. Acnologia was well known throughout Earthland as the bringer of death and destruction, as well as a name that struck fear into the hearts of even the four gods of Ishkar. They had no idea that monster had such a history and such power. It really worried them about what their son had to do with his story, but they had a pretty good idea of what it would be. I can see by your faces you have an idea of what I want to do with your son. Raijin said as though it was a statement and not a question, to which Minato and Kushina nodded towards him. I want him to be able to correct the mistake we dragons did in the past and defeat Acnologia as the first god dragon slayer. Raijin said proudly as he rose to his full height and spread his wings out to their full length. Minato and Kushina looked at the dragon with awe as the sun reflecting off of his scales from behind made him look godlike. Raijin then folded his wings back up and leaned down to be level with the two mages. Of course I will need your permission in order to teach it to him, and he can also learn any magic you want to teach him as well. It's completely your choice. Minato and Kushina didn't know what to say. On one hand, their son could be one of the most powerful wizards alive and will definitely be strong enough to defend himself, especially from those traitors from their previous home. But on the other hand he would have to go up against the most terrifying creature ever created and most likely have a battle to the death with it. Kushina was the first to speak up and tried to find a way out. But we won't have enough time. He would need to be trained until he's an adult for him to even go up against one of the normal wizard saints with our magic alone. He won't be able to go up against a dragon as powerful as Acnologia. There's no need to worry about that, time is much slower here than in the real world. When he reaches his prime and is at the peak of his power, we can transport him back to Earthland and reverse his age so that he will look the proper age in the real world depending on how much time has passed and any magic that he has learned, and his magical energy will remain the same as well. And my dragon slaying magic is more powerful than Acnologia's will ever be. Raijin reassured them as he gained a bored look on his face and leaned on one of his front legs like a human would. Kushina looked ready to argue with the dragon again but was stopped when Minato put a hand on her shoulder. You have my permission to train him, Raijin-sama. Minato said as Kushina looked at him in shock. This will be a good thing for him, Kushina. We don't know the full extent of Raijin-sama's dragon slaying magic, but we do know that it must be very powerful in order to kill a dragon. Plus if what he said is true, then we can watch Naruto grow up like we wanted to and make sure that he will become a strong mage just like us. What have we got to lose? Kushina couldn't help but agree with Minato's logic but was still worried for Naruto's safety. She looked towards Raijin and said. Will you promise me that Naruto will be fine when training with you? Raijin just nodded at the couple and sat up straight. So what is your answer, Kushina-san? Raijin asked as he looked towards the protective mother and her child. Kushina looked at Naruto's sleeping form then towards Raijin with a sigh. I give you permission, Raijin-sama. Kushina said as Minato hugged her from behind and gave her a loving smile. Raijin just grinned at the couple and looked towards the sky with one thought in mind. This is going to be very interesting. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. So how do you like my new story? Please end a review and tell me what you think. Raijin sighed as he began talking. Minato, Kushina, I think it's time I told you the main reason I brought you and your child here. Minato and Kushina looked at Raijin with raised eyebrows. The true reason is that I want him to learn my magic. Both parents had wide eyes at what the dragon just said but managed to get out of their shock quickly. What do you mean, Raijin-sama? Why do you want Naruto to learn your magic? And what exactly is your magic? Minato questioned the dragon god who just sighed and began to explain some things to them. Let me start with this, over 400 years ago, the dragons were the kings of the world and humans were food to the dragons who flew the skies, freely dominating the lands and seas. However, an unknown dragon questioned the reign of the dragons. The latter wanted the dragons and the humans to coexist in the world. The war brewed between the dragons who supported dragon-human coexistence and those who were against the ideology. The war spread chaos through the lands and the dragons were at stalemate. The humans supporting dragons devised a cunning plan. They provided some humans with magic that allowed them to slay dragons. This gave birth to the dragon slayers. These dragon slayers were feared throughout the world as monstrous mages with unknown capabilities and immense potential to become literal gods among normal humans. The plan proved to be very successful as the humans supporting dragons gained the upper hand in the war. However, they did not anticipate their fellow dragon slayers' next move. Corrupted by the immense power gifted unto them by the dragon slayers started to slay the dragons on their side. Minato and Kushina gasped at what the dragon slayers did to their own comrades, but they both knew that Raijin was not finished yet. But there was one man among the dragon slayers who bathed in the blood of too many dragons. He continued to destroy dragons and bathe in their blood until he began to change. Minato didn't like where this story was heading and had a bad feeling about what Raijin wanted to do with Naruto. His skin turned to scales, his teeth to fangs, his nails turned into claws, he transformed into a dragon himself. A human became a dragon. Kushina gasped as she held Naruto tighter. This particular human proclaimed himself to be the Dragon King and became known as the Black Dragon, or as you might know him. The Black Dragon in the Book of Apocalypse, Acnologia. At the name of the Black Dragon, Memodo and Kushina paled and took a step back in both shock and fear. Acnologia was well known throughout Earthland as the bringer of death and destruction, as well as a name that struck fear into the hearts of even the four gods of Ishkar. They had no idea that monster had such a history and such power. It really worried them about what their son had to do with this story, but they had a pretty good idea of what it would be. I can see by your faces you have an idea of what I want to do with your son. Raijin said as though it was a statement and not a question, to which Memodo and Kushina nodded towards him. I want him to be able to correct the mistake we dragons did in the past and defeat Acnologia as the first god dragon slayer. Raijin said proudly as he rose to his full height and spread his wings out to their full length. Memodo and Kushina looked at the dragon with awe as the sun reflecting off of his scales from behind made him look godlike. Raijin then folded his wings back up and leaned down to be level with the two mages. Of course I will need your permission in order to teach it to him, and he can also learn any magic you want to teach him as well. It's completely your choice. Memodo and Kushina didn't know what to say. On one hand, their son could be one of the most powerful wizards alive and will definitely be strong enough to defend himself, especially from those traitors from their previous home. But on the other hand, he would have to go up against the most terrifying creature ever created and most likely have a battle to the death with it. Kushina was the first to speak up and tried to find a way out. But we won't have enough time. He would need to be trained until he's an adult for him to even go up against one of the normal wizard saints with our magic alone. He won't be able to go up against a dragon as powerful as Acnologia. There's no need to worry about that, time is much slower here than in the real world. When he reaches his prime and is at the peak of his power, we can transport him back to Earthland and reverse his age so that he will look the proper age in the real world, depending on how much time has passed and any magic that he has learned, and his magical energy will remain the same as well. And my dragon slaying magic is more powerful than Acnologia's will ever be. Raijin reassured them as he gained a bored look on his face and leaned on one of his front legs like a human would. Kushina looked ready to argue with the dragon again but was stopped when Memodo put a hand on her shoulder. You have my permission to train him, Raijin-sama. Memodo said as Kushina looked at him in shock. This will be a good thing for him, Kushina. We don't know the full extent of Raijin-sama's dragon slaying magic, but we do know that it must be very powerful in order to kill a dragon. Plus if what he said is true, then we can watch Naruto grow up like we wanted to and make sure that he will become a strong mage just like us. What have we got to lose? Kushina couldn't help but agree with Minado's logic but was still worried for Naruto's safety. She looked towards Raijin and said. Will you promise me that Naruto will be fine when training with you? Raijin just nodded at the couple and sat up straight. So what is your answer, Kushina-san? Raijin asked as he looked towards the protective mother and her child. Kushina looked at Naruto's sleeping form then towards Raijin with a sigh. I give you permission, Raijin-sama. Kushina said as Memodo hugged her from behind and gave her a loving smile. Raijin just grinned at the couple and looked towards the sky with one thought in mind. This is going to be very interesting. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Chapter 2. Dragon Realm Frozen Peak. Damn you, Ryu-asan. Why did I have to train here this week? A 7-year-old Naruto thought as was currently as his parents would put it freezing his ass off in the highest and coldest mountain in all of the Dragon Realm. Ever since Memodo and Kushina had accepted Raijin's offer to train their son in his secret dragon slaying magic, they had been preparing him for the day when he would harness and learn magic. When he reached the age of 5 his parents had made him do physical exercise in order for him to keep his body in shape and at peak condition. Over the years Memodo and Kushina had started teaching Naruto the basics of magic and different types of magic before they started teaching him their magic. Kushina taught Naruto the art of the sword and the types of magic she specialized in, requip, sword make and chain magic. Naruto excelled in sword make and chain magic as it was the natural magic used by his mother's family and was just starting to get requip down, so far he could teleport small daggers into his space and bring them out with ease, but still had trouble with swords and armors. His father trained him in how to sense magical energies and control his as well as teaching him thought projection, the different kinds and uses of lacrima and his signature teleportation and energy make magic. He had started on the first step of his father's signature move by trying to rotate water inside balloon and making it pop using only his magic. Along with these, both Memodo and Kushina taught him runes magic and all the subcategories under it. They were shocked to find that he soaked the lessons up like a sponge, which gave them smiles as that was their favorite magic to learn as kids. But when he turned 6, Ryujin and his mate Beniham had started to teach Naruto their own types of dragon slayer magic. Ryujin had taught Naruto his god dragon slayer magic and all the dragon slaying magic types that there were, except crimson dragon slayer magic. Beniham was the queen of the crimson dragons and wanted to teach Naruto her magic without Ryujin's teaching methods. Now back to why Naruto was on top of the coldest peak in the dragon realm. Since Ryujin was teaching Naruto all the different types of dragon slayer magic, Naruto had to train in each of their respective environments, and this week happened to be when Ryujin would teach Naruto ice dragon slayer magic, so that meant that Naruto would have to train to get his body used to cold temperatures. And Ryujin decided to leave Naruto in only his pants and the basics for the magic. It has been a week since Naruto had been dropped off by his torturer of a teacher and was waiting for Beniham to pick him up, but not before he finished his training. Despite the conditions that the dragon god left the poor boy in, he was extremely grateful for the dragon that the training wasn't a complete waste of time and energy. His body had gotten used to the cold and deadly weather on his 3rd day on the peak and trained his ass off the rest of the days he had on the frozen nightmare training in the art of ice dragon slayer magic with the caretaker that Ryujin had dropped him off to. Meru. The Eastern Ice-type dragon was great company for Naruto as he had learned to keep a cool head when in battle and to not overthink his actions or plans so much whenever they spared with each other. Whenever Naruto would use his Ice Dragon Slayer magic against Meru, his hair would somehow turn white, like freshly fallen snow, and his skin would turn a little pale. They both waved this off as a side effect of the magic he was using. Before he left though, Meru challenged Naruto to a fight in order to test out how far Naruto had progressed in the last week, and Naruto didn't disappoint him. The battle they had left a giant hole in the side of the mountain, but with all the snow and ice, it looked like just another part of the dangerous mountain waiting to claim another life. Naruto was brought out of his thoughts when he heard a wing beat in the distance and looked to see Beniham flying towards him with a small speck on her head. Channeling magic to his eyes so he could see better, Naruto smiled slightly despite the intense cold as he saw his mother Kushina riding atop of the crimson dragon's head looking desperately for him. When they got closer and spotted him shivering in the cold air, Kushina jumped off the Dragon Queen's head and with a powerful leap, landed in front of her son as proceeded to hug the life back into him. "Oh my little baby boy. I missed you so much. You're not hurt, are you?" Kushina said frantically as she searched Naruto over for any bruising or frostbite. "And no Kaya-san, I'm fine. Just a little sea cold is all." Naruto tried to calm his mother down as she used her re-equip to summon a large thermal blanket and covered Naruto with it. "Come on sweetie, it's time to go home." Kushina rubbed his back as they made their way over to Beniham, who had just landed and was looking at Naruto with some worry in her eyes as well. Over the years of getting to know the young dragon slayer, she had grown attached to him like he was her own hatchling, and even though he wouldn't admit it, Ryujin had thought so too. Beniham crouched down to let the mother and son duo climb onto of her back before taking off and flying back towards their home. Dragon Realm Meadow of Memories. "Damn you Ryujin-sama. Naruto was right, you are a torturer." Another Namikaze thought as he lay down in the middle of a newly formed crater taking in air like a sponge to water. Over the years of being in the dragon realm, both Minato and Kushina had lost their touch after looking after Naruto with the help of the dragon god and his mate and had only just recently gotten into training again. One of the training schedules that they had made was if both dragon could help them by fighting against them. They had both regretted it ever since. Minato looked up towards the edge of the ditch and saw Ryujin lying there with an amused look on his face that Minato glared at despite being in pain. Now Minato, if you do that long enough your face will stay that way." Ryujin mock scolded Minato like a child as his glare increased until it looked like his eyes were glowing comically and he breathed out. I hate you." Ryujin smiled towards the downed human as he sensed his mate's magical signature getting closer with 2 other ones on her and one had a cold feeling to it which made him smile even wider at that fact. He then looked towards Minato who was just starting to get his bearings back and told him in a bored tone. "You better look good Minato, your son's arriving and what would he think if he sees his father panting like a dog and his opponent hasn't even broken a sweat." Ryujin smiled again as he saw the blonde-haired man glared at him again before getting up weakly and made his way up the hole. "Your argument is invalid, Ryujin-sama. I have never seen you sweat the entire time here," Minato said as he quickly requited to change his clothes into his casual wear and waited for the rest of his family to arrive. A few minutes later Beniham flew over the field and landed a few feet from the pair before Kushina and Naruto jumped down off her back and made their way over to Minato and Ryujin. When Naruto got close enough, Minato walked over to his son and hugged him for completing his training and was going to reward him with as much ramen as he could eat. Ryujin smiled at the scene in front of him as Beniham made her way over to him and smiled as well, but the dragon god noticed that his mate had a different kind of smile on her face and looked at her confused. Here he got Benham's attention. "What with that smile on your face, is there something I should know?" As the Dragon King finished he started to sweat as his mate grinned like a cat with a canary and turned back towards the family, leaving a confused and slightly startled Raijin in her wake. Shaking those thoughts out of his head, Raijin walked towards his student and his family and spoke up. "Welcome home, Naruto, I trust your training was successful." Raijin's answer came in the form of a fist covered in ice descending upon his head and leaving a comical courtesy of his young apprentice. "Yes, it was. In fact, Heimermeru sensei said that with some more training I will surpass him in ice dragon magic in no time," Naruto said as Raijin glared comically at the boy before standing up and mumbling something under his breath about disrespectful students and stupid ice dragons. Standing up again, Raijin narrowed his eyes, which caught everyone's attention, and was startled a bit when they heard him let out a low growl. "They're back," he growled out as Naruto widened his eyes while Minato, Kushina and Benihim narrowed their eyes as they all knew who Raijin was talking about. A couple of years back some of the humans who lived in Minato and Kushina's former village wandered into the cave and was not scared of the magical energy Raijin released and saw the altar. After they went back to the village, Raijin used his magic to create an orb of light to see what the villagers would do next. He was angered when he found out that they were going to move the altar into the middle of the village in order to gain some more tourists and try to harness the magical energy from the gem in the altar. He had used all of his magic in order to protect it from being experimented on and succeeded a bit, but they still used the altar to attract the wrong crowd. The humans in the village would often go up to the altar and pray to it like it was some kind of mystical object from heaven. Even some people from a place called the Zentopia Church came to see the altar and proclaimed that it was a religious artifact that must be protected at all costs. What a bunch of morons. Over the years, Raijin and the others had planned for Naruto to move the secret portal to the dragon realm out of the village and hide it somewhere safe from others. The whole altar didn't need to be taken, just the crystal in it. But now Raijin had enough of it and decided it was time for Naruto to meet the village that betrayed his parents. He hoped that Naruto would be okay. Later that same night, Tree Village, 1. Tree Village. One of the most greenest places in Fiori, a place known for the enormous amounts of trees surrounding it and home to some of the most well-known mages in the land and known only to the inhabitants of the village, the home of traders. A few years ago the village's own leader, Wizard Saint Minato Namikaze, was killed by the very village he grew up in, and the people he trusted and no one outside of its walls knew that truth. The only thing they cared about was power, and his son was the key to that power. But now that he is gone thanks to the brat's father, they had to search for another source of power to satisfy their greed, and it came in the form of a small rock. They were baffled that such an object could hold power surpassing that of the strongest of the wizard saints by an impossible amount. By all that they needed to know was if that power could be harnessed and used by them and how much power it truly held. They had some of their most knowledgeable mages look into the rock whenever there was no one around because of what some priest said about the altar being sacred or something like that, but they didn't care. At the moment the altar was being heavily guarded in the middle of the village in a small shrine that was protected by some of the village's most skilled mages and was thought to be one of the most guarded places in the village, but they were in for a surprise. Inside of the shrine, at the far back where the altar was located, a bright light was seen for less than a second before dying down and revealing the form of a young child covered in black clothes with a hood covering the top half of his face and a mask for the lower half. He looked around with his blue-slitted eyes, seeing if the coast was clear, and let out a sigh of relief as he was right. Seeing that his trip was successful, he continued his plan and looked towards the rainbow stone in the altar before him and started chanting. As he did so, some writing appeared around the altar before it began to shine. He speed up his chanting until the writing finally disappeared and quickly went to work. He quickly stepped up to the altar and carefully took out the stone and held it in his hands for a second, admiring the beauty of it, before he felt a lot of magical signatures closing in on his location and cursed under his breath. A red magic circle appeared in his hands before the stone vanished and he quickly took his leave. He appeared out of thin air a couple of buildings outside the shrine and ducked down into the nearest alleyway in order to avoid the numerous people overhead running towards the place he left from no too long ago. Quickly poking his head out of the alley, he saw that the street was clear and that there was no magical signatures in the area and started running. As he ran, he looked around the village and took in the sights. He couldn't believe that this was the place his parents grew up in and was betrayed by the very people in it. It was so beautiful, even if it was nighttime. As he was running, he never saw or sensed a person walk in the path in front of him and bumped into them. Rubbing his head in pain, he stiffened when he heard a voice ask him, "Hey Gaki, are you okay?" Swearing in his head, he looked up to see who it was. The person was a young female who was older than him with purple hair that was tied up to look like a pineapple and pupil-less brown eyes. She wore a short-sleeved burgundy t-shirt and khaki shorts, as well as knee-high mesh stockings, white wristbands, and black sandals. Shaking his head, Naruto replied, Yeah, I'm okay. I'm just late getting home is all. He lied hoping that the girl would buy it. You shouldn't be out this late, you know, who knows what kind of creeps could be out this time of night. Yeah, I know, it's just that my friend invited me over to his house and we were playing games so much that I didn't see the time. My parents will be worried about me is all. Naruto said back as he felt a lot of magical signatures at the shrine. He needed to get out of there now. Really? Well then how about I escort you back then? The girl asked, which made Naruto get nervous for a split second before forcing a smile on his face. It's no problem, really. My house is just up around the corner, that's why I was running so fast. The girl looked at him for a second before shrugging and waved him goodbye with a smile and walked in the direction of the shrine. Naruto waved to her until she was out of sight before sighing in relief and went back to running. He ran through the village until he came up to a large gate that surrounded the outside of the village and saw a booth with 2 guards in it playing poker of all things. Royal flush, I win. One of the guards said as the other one put his head down. Ah man, that to the 3rd time in a row. Ahaha, I am the poker king. The winner said as none of them realized a small kid walked by and run into the forest. Dad told me that this village's security was the best, what the hell do you call that, Dad? Naruto thought as he jumped from tree to tree and got farther away from the village and most importantly danger. He let out another sigh as he jumped past the cave his parents and Raijin talked about and looked in sadness. It was the place that his parents died and Raijin lived in and gave his parents a second chance at life and it was, technically, the place he grew up in. He was going to miss it. He made it a couple of miles out before he stopped in a clearing to rest a bit. His parents' physical training was paying off. When he first started he couldn't have been able to make it this far in that amount of time without passing out of throwing up or both. He would have continued on with his thoughts, but he then felt his something wrap around his arms and torso and squeeze tightly. He struggled against the binding only to hear them hiss at him. Looking down he saw that there were 4 snakes tying him up and looked at them confused. He felt them slowly draining his magic every time he struggled and knew that it would only get worse if he continued, so he stopped moving and calmed down. That's a good idea, you know. Looking towards the forest Naruto saw the same purple-haired girl from the village earlier coming out of the foliage and smirking at him. You either knew that they drained your magic the more you move or they were too tight for you, she finished in a sing-along voice that sent shivers up Naruto's spine for some reason. Dad said that women were a mystery to him, now I know what he means. I have no idea what this girl means by that. An innocent Naruto thought as the snakes around him got tighter as the girl moved closer towards him with a dangerous smile on her face. Now I will only ask this once, she said as she leaned closer to him and spoke in his ear. Why did you take the stone? Naruto, knowing that this girl was onto him, played the idiot and asked. What stone? The girl's mouth twitched for a second before looking him in the face and spoke in a voice that should never be heard. You know, the one that you stole from the village shrine and was the reason you were running through the streets. Naruto opened his mouth to speak, but the girl beat him to it. I followed you after I left, you know. I saw you go turn the corner and then another until you made it to the gate and freaking walked past the 2 dummies working there and run into the forest. Naruto started to sweat as he looked into the eyes of the girl and shivered as she licked her tongue across his covered whiskered cheek and smiled at him. When a person sees that after a person says that their home is right around the corner, it makes you wonder about them. Naruto looked at the girl and his mind was racing at a mile a second. Think of what on earth land to do. He could easily burn the snakes around him and in the process shocking the girl long enough for him to teleport him out of there. He could also use his shadow dragon slaying magic to turn into a shadow and get out of there in the cover of the night. But, amongst all of his thoughts he asked her one question. Why do you want the stone back? The girl was caught off guard by the question and looked at him strangely before answering him. I don't give a damn about that piece of earth. Now it was Naruto's turn to look at her strangely. That thing took away the only person I thought of as a mother I ever had. It's that village that wants it, not me. She finished as Naruto saw her clenching her hands tight enough for blood to be seen. Naruto raised an eyebrow as her story and decided to hear what else she had to say about it as he tried to find a way out of the snakes without her noticing. I was out of the village all those years ago, so I don't know what exactly happened to her. All that Sarutobi, the leader of our village and guild master that the wizard guild in it, said was that she and her lover tried fraud against a strong mage who kidnapped her and used her as a bargaining chip for the village's secrets. The lover wouldn't allow for that to happen, so he teleported all of them to a cave that was forbidden at that time to enter, because anyone who dared enter it died. Naruto narrowed his eyes at the obvious lie, but decided to hear her out as the story sounded somehow familiar to him. He said when he made it there he only found their clothes outside the cave and no signs of anyone leaving the area. When I found out she had died I was so sad, she was one of the only people who cared for me, she thought of me like her daughter, she helped me through my depression, she trailed off as tears came into her eyes, then she looked at him with an angry expression. And it's all thanks to that stupid rock. I wanted so badly to destroy it or seal it away so it could never do that to anyone again, but those stupid villager thought that it could give them power. The power they needed. The power they said they deserved. Who thinks that? The girl was now red in the face with anger and tried to calm herself down with deep breaths. While she was doing that she didn't see Naruto looking at her with wide eyes. What's even worse was that she was pregnant. That made Naruto's eyes almost pop out of his head. I could have been an older sister by now. I would have been called Nisan. Naruto couldn't believe what he was hearing, she couldn't be talking about his parents, could she? Excuse me, Naruto said, gaining her attention. You wouldn't happen to be talking about Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, would you? As soon as he finished speaking the girl picked him up by the collar and was brought inches away from her face as she had an angered and dark look on it. How do you know that? She said in a dangerous voice as Naruto started to sweat. My village had heard some rumors around his disappearance, there were also some about being seen with a pregnant red-haired woman all the time and acting like really happy around her. We only found out recently what her name was. Naruto finished as the purple-haired girl glared at him and didn't let up until she threw him onto the ground with a lot of force. He slowly got back up only to find a very sharp and pointy katana-type sword in front of his face and had some type of liquid on it from his time training with Yamada-sensei, the king of the poison dragons, too. He could tell it was a heavy concentrated amount of poison in the blade for just a small amount. Man, even if I'm immune to most, if not all poison something new introduced into my system will take a long time to analyze and create antibodies for. I need to get out of here now. Naruto thought frantically and he prepared his magic to escape as he saw the girl raise the sword high in the air. From the sound of it, there must be some spies in the village if I'm correct. Don't worry, when I'm done with you and take that damn stone back to the old monkey we will deal with the informants in the village as soon as possible. She held the sword with both hands and raised it above her head execution style before she brought it down as it glistened in the moonlight. Die. She brought her sword down with a powerful slash but stopped near the ground as she hit nothing. Blinking a few times she looked down to see the snakes she used to bind the brat slither up to her with what looked like confused looks on their faces and hisses as well. Growing angry at the thought of losing the brat, she ordered the snakes to look for him as she sent for backup. While she was doing that a shadow moved quickly through the clearing and into the dark forest ahead, not being spotted by the dangerous girl. The shadow let out a sigh of relief before it turned into the form of Naruto and kept moving. He momentarily winced and moved his hand to the left side of his neck and ran one of his fingers along a newly made cut. He battered himself for not escaping from the girl sooner but had bigger problem on his mind, his vision was starting to get blurry. He knew the poison was fast acting because of the concentration, but he didn't think it was this fast. His father told him about the village using the same type of poison when they betrayed him and his mother and now knew how they felt. He had to find shelter and get to the dragon realm as soon as he could, he couldn't protect himself from anyone when his body would start to accept the poison in his system. He had to be fast. Kushina was worried. It had been a while since her son had left the dragon realm and went to that cursed village she once called a home. She was worried what would happen to him if someone found out who he was and what they might do to him when they did, she didn't want to think about any of it. She paced around in the meadow of memories, the place where she and Minato first woke up and where they built their house, while Minato, Raijin and Benihim tried to calm her down. They were interrupted by a blinding light that appeared in the middle of the meadow for a second and revealed it to be Naruto as he fell on the ground. As his parents and teachers got closer to him they got worried when they saw him sweating and breathing deeply and his body convulsed every few seconds. Kushina started to check him over while Minato placed his hand on his son's forehead and applied magic to it. He has a high fever, very high. And his body is working overtime on something, but I can't explain what. Minato said as he took his hand off Naruto's forehead and helped his wife check over their son. Hearing Kushina gasp, Minato looked at where Kushina was looking at and saw a small cut on his neck, not too deep so that he would bleed out but deep enough for something to enter the bloodstream, and looking at the liquid around the cut he assumed that something did indeed enter his bloodstream and was affecting him. Raijin-sama, do you know what's happening to Naruto? Minato asked as Raijin moved closer and lowered his head. The gem in the center of the forehead glowed for a second and the dragon god's eyes widened before straightening up. His white blood cells are working overtime to counteract a new poison that has been introduced into his blood. I can also feel his poison dragon magic being used as well. There's nothing we can do but wait. Raijin said dejectedly as the rest of the group looked at Naruto and prayed for his safety. Later that night Naruto woke up and found himself tucked up in his bed with something wet on his forehead. Lifting the covers off of him, Naruto moved his hand to his head and felt that a cloth was the source of the wetness he felt and took it off his head. Standing up, Naruto walked out of his room and into the family lounge. As he walked in he saw his Minato sitting on one of the couches in the living room, reading a book titled Lost Magics in the World, while he heard his mother in the kitchen, most likely making dinner. "Hey Toussaint." Naruto greeted his dad. Minato looked up from the book he was reading and smiled towards his son. "Hey son, how are you doing?" Minato asked as he walked towards his son. "I'm fine, just a little lightheaded." Naruto replied as he and Minato made their way into the kitchen. As soon as they were in the kitchen Kushina turned to greet her husband but stopped when she saw her son and rushed over to him, which she then proceeded to hug him back into unconsciousness. After finally letting him go Minato and Kushina sat him down and asked him if he was okay and what happened to him. Naruto proceeded to tell them about his run around the village and running to a purple-haired girl on the street before leaving and making his dad sweat drop about the village's security and how the same girl followed him out of the village and the story that she told him and how he escaped. When he was finished both of his parents were wide-eyed and raised an eyebrow at them. "Ah-chan, Toussaint. What's wrong?" "Naruto, what did you say about the magic this girl used?" Minato asked his son as Kushina looked like she was about to cry. "Well, she used some kind of magic that I guess summoned snakes to help her. And she might have used Requip to summon her sword as well." Naruto answered before he say his mother start to cry. "Ka-chan, are you okay?" "Those bastards," Kushina said quietly, but Naruto and Minato still heard her. Naruto was slightly taken back as he never heard his mother swear like that before. Naruto looked towards his dad for an answer as Minato sighed and sat next to Kushina and tried to help her out. "Naruto, as you know before our former village betrayed me and your mother we had a normal life with our friends and family." Naruto nodded as he had heard before about how his parents were friendly with everyone in the village and view some of them as family. "Well, some of those family members we saw in both of our students and one of them was a girl called Anko, she is most likely the girl that you described to us just now." Minato said sadly as Naruto widened his eyes. "Wait, that girl was your student?" Naruto shouted. "She was one of mine." Kushina said she leaned into Minato's shoulder. "She was one of my 5 students that I trained before I got pregnant. She was abandoned by both her family and her previous teacher and didn't trust anyone else that tried to make their way into her life until she met me. She didn't trust me at first, but over time she slowly opened up to me and viewed me as a mother figure and I saw her as a daughter." "Wait, so that means that," Naruto spoke before Kushina interrupted. "You could say that she is your older sister." Kushina finished as Naruto's eyes widened comically before he walked over to the couch opposite his parents and sat down. He couldn't believe it, he had met his supposed sister figure and she was going to kill him. In her defense though she didn't know who he was. The family sat in silence for a long time before Naruto spoke up. "What should we do?" he asked. "For now, we do nothing," Minato answered. "Me and Kushina can't leave this realm since we will have no physical bodies there and because we are technically dead and you can't just go back to the village talk to her either. So we do nothing and just wait until you see her again. If you ever see her again." Minato finished as Kushina and Naruto nodded in agreement. Well, if anything, meeting Anko was helpful in some ways. It proves that not everyone in the village knows what really happened and that we might be able to trust some people in it if we can convince them of who I really am and what really happened. Minato and Kushina thought about what Naruto had said and thought that he was right. "Not only that, but I also need to up my training with all of you since I couldn't sense her following me and she managed to surprise me with her magic as well. It proves that I still have a long way to go." Naruto finished as his parent looked at him with pride, knowing that Naruto knew he had weaknesses and that he knew what they were. They both knew that in order for a person to become a powerful mage, you must first know your weaknesses and train to try and overcome them. Minato smiled before he stood up and walked up to his son and put a hand on his shoulder. "Well then, if you want to become stronger as your father I will do whatever I can to help." Minato said as Kushina smiled and walked over to her son too. "And as your mother it is my duty to make sure that my baby is big and strong." Achan Naruto whined as his parents laughed at their son's embarrassment and made a silent promise to themselves to make sure that Naruto would be the strongest mage that there is. Dragon Realm Boiling Lake 10 years later. Boiling Lake, one of the most relaxing places in the whole Dragon Realm. Floating on one of the many islands in the realm, the Boiling Lake is located in the middle of a seemingly lifeless island with multiple natural hot springs on the outer perimeters of the island that many dragons would often occupy in their free time and 3 humans as well. But this was not the scene at this present moment. In the middle of the 100-degree lake was a large chunk of land that was currently occupied by one of the 3 humans living in the realm. The human was currently meditating as the steam from the water below him rose into the sky and helped calm his senses. Naruto was now a 17-year-old looking teen with his usual spiky blonde hair, dipping slightly from all the water vapor in the air, and his face looking like all of his baby fat was gone and has whisker marks on his cheeks, giving him a feral appearance. He was currently wearing a long-sleeved white shirt with a golden bordered collar and matching colored pants. On his feet he wore a pair of black boots. He wears wide arm guards with golden dragon head designs on them and white shin guards as well. Naruto was meditating peacefully before he heard a noise in the air above him and slowly opened both of his eyes. Looking up, Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly as he saw a shadow pass through the steam overhead and stood up. Naruto shifted his eyes around as he heard something move in the air around him and decided to clear his vision. Sky Dragon's wing attack. Whirlwinds of air formed around Naruto's arms before he moved them around in a circular motion and cleared away all the steam around him, but he still didn't see a thing. He couldn't use his sense of smell because of all the moisture in the air, and whatever was moving was going too fast for his advanced hearing to pinpoint, and he couldn't sense its magical energy either. Naruto started walking around and kept his calm as he looked towards a nearby ridge and smiled. Sitting atop of the ridge were Naruto's parents and foster parents, and they all looked at him with small smiles on their faces and wishing him luck for the task ahead. Ever since that day 10 years ago, Naruto had been doing non-stop training in order for him to get stronger and prove himself of being a true dragon slayer and mage. He had trained in every dragon slaying art there was and has mastered most of them to the point where it would be like he was in Dragon 4 state for each respective element, and he had succeeded in entering each Dragon 4 state, even if it was for a limited time. Naruto also excelled at using both of his parents' magics as well. He had mastered his mother's sword make magic and chain magic to the point where he create countless amounts of swords and chains with little to no effort in the quickest amount of time. He had also mastered requip so that he could send and receive swords, armors and other objects into his own personal space with ease and use them in battle. He also made some armors to use with the help of his mother and some of the dragons as well. His father's energy make magic and teleportation magic were like second nature for Naruto to use, and his primary magic to use in a fight against both of his parents and any mages he would come across when he traveled to Earthland to gain experience or money, and had also helped upgrading them and creating new spells together with him. Memodo also taught him a type of cloning magic called replication. It has the ability to evenly distribute the user's magic to create solid clones of the original and giving each clone an equal fraction of the user's overall power. It also allowed the user to gain any of the experiences that the clones have, which helped Naruto excel his training to a whole new level when he had mastered it. But what Naruto was really proud of is the fact that his abilities in runes magic are at the same level as his parents, and he couldn't be happier. After years of his parents drilling theorems and uses of runes into his head, he was finally able to stand by his parents' side and call himself a rune master just like them. With all of Naruto's training, Kushina and Memodo thanked Raijin enough for giving Naruto the opportunity to learn his magic and grow into a strong man before them, even if it meant destroying the most dangerous creature on the planet, they were happy. Although at this very moment they looked at their son with some worry as he moved across the only piece of land in the middle of a boiling lake looking out for his enemy. Even though Naruto had learnt every type of dragon slayer magic, there was he yet to be called a master of that art until he had beat each and every dragon that trained him in an official fight, and now was one of those times as Naruto was going face to face with a dragon at this very moment. Naruto looked around the lake and narrowed his eyes as he heard the sound of splashing water behind him and turned around to see nothing. Naruto relaxed a little bit and released a sigh as he battered himself for being too paranoid, but he stopped when he felt something drip onto his head and looked up. Naruto widened his eyes as he saw his opponent looking down at him with a neutral look on his face and glowing blue-green eyes. His opponent in question was a white-scaled western-type dragon with a long snout and has two pointed long horns and two shorter horns in front. Naruto chuckled nervously as he waved to the dragon. Hey Kakum-sensei, so that's where you are. Naruto said sarcastically as the dragon made no response other than raising one of its claws in the air and slammed it down. Naruto quickly moved out of the way before the claw could hit him and watched with wide eyes as the ground he was previously standing on was reduced to nothing but dust. He landed on what remained of the ground and turned around to the dragon and opened his mouth as steam slowly made its way out. Steam Dragon's roar. A stream of condensed steam erupted from Naruto's mouth and quickly made its way towards the large dragon, who did nothing but stand there and take the attack full on. As the steam cleared away, Naruto saw that Kakum was still standing there as if nothing happened and let out a small growl. Why doesn't my steam affect you? I did everything right, so why don't you look all a bit weakened? Naruto asked in frustration. It is because you have only attacked me once. The test has just started, Naruto, remember you need to assess your enemy for any weaknesses they may have and exploit it. Kakum said as he looked towards his student who had started to calm down and looked towards him with calculative eyes. After a brief stare-off between master and student, Naruto ran towards the steam dragon and raised his hand up high. Steam Dragon's Eruption Fist. Naruto punched the air and released a giant, high-speed steam blast in the shape of a fist straight toward Kakum, who dodged the attack and dived into the boiling water below them. Naruto stopped running and looked towards where Kakum had jumped in and dove straight in after the dragon. Up on the cliff above, Kushina looked on as the battle went underwater and decided to ask a question that had been bothering her. "Excuse me, Raijin-sama, how exactly is this steam dragon slayer magic helpful?" Raijin looked at Kushina and saw that she was confused about how useful this magic was to anyone and answered her. "Well, Kushina-san, it might not look that way, but, in terms of physical strength, only two other types of dragon magic can rival my own strength, steam dragon magic is one of them." Raijin said as Kushina looked at the dragon god with wide eyes, while Minato had a questioning look on his face. As you know, different dragons have different styles of fighting and different ways to use their magic as well. Mountain dragons, which is the other type of dragons with immense physical strength, don't have an elemental nature to their attacks, but instead use their magic to enhance their strength by making their bones more dense, tightening every individual muscle fiber so that no power is lost. Making their skin and scales as hard as a mountain, hence why they are called mountain dragons and why they are hard to defeat. Minato and Kushina nodded their head as Raijin paused so that they could absorb the information. Steam dragons on the other hand use another method to grant them immense strength. They can increases the temperature of their magic to the boiling point, generating large amounts of steam and evaporating any water or ice in direct contact with their body. The pressure resulting from this emitted steam can then be used to increase the force behind physical attacks. The exact amount of force produced is proportional to the quantity of steam released, as the greater the volume of steam utilized, the larger the pressure that can be built up. Kakum and dragons like his do this, but building up pressure under their scales and then releasing it. By releasing the pressure, not only the strength can be improved, but also the speed. Raijin stopped explaining as the group of humans and dragons saw the water below them explode and saw Kakum flying out of the water with Naruto at the front of his snout, trying to keep the dragon from eating him whole. As Naruto was trying his best to keep the dragon's shiny white teeth from taking a huge chunk out of him, he involuntarily took a sniff of the dragon's breath and looked like he was going to puke. "Oh, man. Have you ever heard of a breath mint before, Kakum? Because you need one badly." Naruto said as the steam dragon narrowed his eyes at the blonde's comment about his breath and replied with force. Naruto the dragon's jaw start to open wider and looked down Kakum's throat and began to sweat as he saw steam escape from it and decided to bail. As Kakum released his dragon's roar, Naruto jumped down and barely made it out in time, but his left arm got hit and Naruto fell down to the ground. Naruto readjusted himself before he could hit the ground and landed on all fours before his left arm slipped and he had to steady himself. Naruto staggeringly stood up and watched as his left arm dangled at his side and glared at the dragon who had just landed opposite him. What happened? Why is Naruto's arm like that? Kushina asked worryingly. That, Kushina-san, is the true power of steam dragon magic. Beniham answered Kushina as she too looked at Naruto in worry. Normally steam would help relax the body and open the pores on your skin. This magic takes that to the extreme as it relaxes all the muscles in the body and leave the opponent open for an attack, and it has a special property that allows the steam to relax the hold on a person's magic and release it into the air. Beniham explained. Relax the hold on a person's magic. What does that mean? Minato asked as he continued to watch Naruto clash with the dragon below. Think of it like this, inside of every person, dragon, monster and everything else there is magic that is contained inside of body that is always tense and only relaxes when a person uses magic, kind of like how the heart pumps blood around the body and the valves open and shut on its own. Beniham stopped and let the human couple absorb the information. Well, that valve is always shut until magic is needed by the person. What this magic does is that when the steam is absorbed into the skin, it can make its way towards that body and relaxes it, while at the same time opening these valves and releasing the person's magic without their knowledge. I see, Minato spoke up. So that means that they will gradually get weaker as the fight progresses. And the longer that person keeps fighting, the more magical energy they will lose. Beniham nodded at Minato's explanation and went back to watching the fight. Naruto vs Kakum. Naruto skidded back on the ground as he took a hit from Kakum's steam-enhanced tail and painted slightly. Fighting against a dragon as strong and as skilled as Kakum is no easy task, but he was nothing compared to Raijin. Kakum decided that he had enough of playing around with Naruto and wanted to see how much he had truly progressed in his magic. Kakum rose to his full height, gaining the attention of Naruto and the spectators, and released some steam from behind his scales before raising one of his claws high in the air. Naruto watched as steam started to surround the dragon's fist and brought it down with a roar. Naruto stumbled as the rest of the ground around him started to crack before he was sent flying as the ground crumbled and steam from beneath it sent the chunks into the air as well. Naruto carefully balanced himself on the piece of earth he was standing on before he started jumping on pieces of earth that floated by and made his way towards the edge of the lake. Before he could make it though, Kakum flew up to Naruto and smacked him with his steam-powered tail and sent him flying into the water. "Come on Naruto, I know you're not dead yet. Come on out." Kakum shouted out to his student. Meanwhile underwater, Naruto could be seen sitting on the bottom of the boiling lake while holding his dead arm while trying to think of a way to injure his teacher. After thinking it over for a minute, Naruto sighed and readied himself for what was to come. Naruto closed his eyes and let both arms hang off to his side as he started to gather Adornano from the water around him. Above the lake, the group of spectators look at the lake in worry as Naruto had no resurfaced in a while and was about to go down and see if he was okay until they felt an enormous source of magical energy coming from the lake. Looking down, they all saw the water start to slowly push away until they revealed Naruto's form as his body generated enormous amounts of steam and a wide aura surrounded his form. "Steam drive," Naruto whispered as more steam was produced from his body and pushed back the water some more. "Steam drive, huh?" Kakum thought as he looked at Naruto's form. "So he's planning to enter Dragon 4 state soon. Show me what you got, Naruto." Kakum watched as Naruto looked at his left arm and grabbed it and steam covered it for a moment before dissipating. Naruto then flexed his arm a few times, showing that it had completely healed and looked towards Kakum with a grin that slightly scared him. "I hope you're ready Kakum-sensei, because I'm going all out from now on." Naruto shouted as he took a step forward and disappeared from sight. Kakum looked all around to try and find his blonde-haired student when he heard a noise from behind him, turned around to see Naruto crouching down on the cliffside. Naruto launched off of the cliffside and shrouded himself in steam before he collided headfirst with Kakum. Steam Dragon's Horn Buster. Kakum got launched back from the force of the hit and collided with the cliffside. As the dragon got up, he saw his student running towards him, jumping across the lake on the pieces of earth that remained from his earlier attack. Kakum raised his head up high and released another roar towards Naruto as the blonde responded by releasing his own straight at the dragon. When the steam-powered attacks clashed, the two combatants covered their eyes as the force from the blast sent debris everywhere and steam covered their vision. Kakum ignored the steam as he could easily navigate through it and flew straight towards where Naruto last was, intent on finishing the test now. He was surprised however when he felt pain erupting from his back and looked over to see Naruto standing there with his fist covered in steam. "Steam Dragon's boiling point," Naruto said as Kakum started to cough and before large amounts of steam erupted from different part of the dragon's body and head. As Kakum started to fall, Naruto jumped off of his back, landed on the shore of the lake before he heard a large splashing sound and the ground shake before going quiet again. Naruto turned around and saw that his dragon sensei was not going to get up again and sighed before diving into the water after him. A moment later Naruto re-emerged, dragging Kakum's head after him and stopped when the dragon's head and neck were out of the water and sat on the ground panting. The spectators watching the fight slowly made their way down the cliff and walked towards Naruto and started congratulating him. Naruto smiled as he had proven he has mastered another dragon slaying art and made his parents proud. While Minato, Kushina and Beniham congratulated Naruto on a job well done, Raijin walked over towards Kakum's down form and stood in front of him while the steam dragon weakly opened an eye and looked towards the Dragon King with a chuckle. "That boy is strong, Raijin-sama. I can see why you chose him to be your successor," Kakum said as Raijin smiled at his friend and looked towards his young apprentice. "Yes, he is. He has plenty of experience fighting against every type of dragon, but not as many humans because of his time here in the dragon realm. I think it's almost time for him to leave the nest soon. I only hope that he is ready for that time," Raijin said as he watched Kushina check Naruto over like a worried mother hen while Naruto tried to batter away but failed. "Don't you mean you hope that Kushina-san is ready for when he leaves?" Kakum asked the dragon god as Raijin's sweat dropped. "Yes, that too." Kakum chuckled before slowly standing up on all four and walked over to Naruto, ready to grant Naruto the title of Master Dragon Slayer to him. Earthland year, 776. It had been a week since Naruto had fought against Kakum, and the dragon had made Naruto a Master Steam Dragon Slayer, and the blonde boy couldn't be any happier. Right now however Naruto, after reverting into his 12-year-old form and putting on a white cloak and headband with a metal forehead protector, was now walking down a dirt track towards a small town in the countryside to answer a mission request. Every now and again Naruto would leave the dragon realm in order to see the world and earn money for the day he would have to leave his home and live by himself in the real world. In order for him to do that he had been taking every odd mission that had been requested and completing them all within record time. The mission he was on now was simple, he just had to help the townspeople get rid of some bandits that have been terrorizing them for some time now and get rid of their boss, who had been wanted by the Magic Council for some time now. As Naruto got closer towards the town he could tell it was a simple fishing town as it was located near the ocean and could see ships coming on going on the water. As Naruto walked into the town however he saw that it looked nothing like it did from a distance as he saw a rundown building, people living on the streets, and children no younger than him having to steal food so that they could eat. Naruto clenched his fists when he saw the condition that the town was in and decided to meet the town's leader and see what he was doing about it. Naruto walked around the town for a while until he found the town hall and made his past all the security and made a beeline towards the mayor's office. When he got there he was disgusted by what he saw. Sitting behind a large wooden desk was an overly obese bald man wearing an expensive-looking business suit while he was stuffing his face with an assortment of food that had been laid out on the table. The man looked up from his food for a moment and sneered at Naruto. "Who are you, brat?" the man said in a gruff voice. "I'm the mage that you sent for," Naruto said with a blank face as the man looked at him with a raised eyebrow. "To take care of the bandits in this town. I didn't send for any help from anyone. Now get out of my office," the man yelled as Naruto narrowed his eyes at him before he turned around and left. When Naruto had left the man stopped eating the food on his desk and looked out the window and saw the blonde leaving and growled. "So they're that desperate, huh? Well, it seems that I will have to do something about this." Later that night Naruto had decided to stay in the town for a couple of days to try and find out who had sent out the mission and needed a place to stay the night so he decided to look around town for a hotel. As he was walking down the street he saw a lot of people staring at him with interest in their eyes before looking away and returning to whatever they were doing. Naruto kept walking as he saw people in front of him start to move away and run off to the side and raised an eyebrow. When they moved out of the way he saw that standing in the middle of the street was a small group of 5 men standing in front of him with smirks on their faces as they looked at him. Well, boys. It looks like we found who we're looking for," the man in the middle of the group said. "Yeah boss, haha, he looks pathetic," a man to the now introduced boss's left said. "And who are you guys?" Naruto asked. "We are this town's security, you brat. Ain't that right, boys?" the boss said as his men roared in agreement. "Since we are the law here in this town it is required of us to look for any suspicious characters," the man said as he leaned down to Naruto's eye level. "You look like a suspicious character, mind telling us who you are, brat?" "My name is Naruto, not brat. And I'm here because a mission request from this town said that the people needed help with some bandits that had been terrorizing the town. You wouldn't happen to know where they could be, sir?" Naruto asked with a blank face as the boss got angry before putting on a fake smile and turning his back to the blonde. While this was happening the people around them looked at Naruto with wide eyes while one pair in particular looked nervous. "Sorry brat, I have no idea what you are talking about." Naruto's eye twitched at the brat remark. "There are no bandits in this town. Maybe you got the wrong town or something," the boss said with a smirk that Naruto couldn't see but he could feel the arrogance rolling off the guy in waves. "I'm pretty sure I'm not mistaken," Naruto said as a smile appeared on his face. "After all, if there are no bandits here, then why are you here, Aoi Rakashima?" Aoi stopped in his tracks while multiple gasps could be heard from everyone watch as they had all heard of the dark mage who had abandoned his previous guild and disgraced the grave of a famous mage who was once a member of the 10 Wizard Saints. Aoi slowly turned around and looked at Naruto with a dark look as the blonde dragon slayer kept smiling and spoke. "You should really try to hide yourself better. Other mages could spot you from a mile away." Aoi clenched his fists and signaled for his men to box Naruto in, to which they complied and surrounded the blonde as Naruto just stood there no moving an inch. "So you know who I am, huh? It doesn't matter. I have orders from the fat pig Germa to take you out and that's exactly what I'm going to do." Aoi sneered at the blonde as he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a weird metal-looking handle and smirked as he pushed some of his magical energy into it and a bright yellow blade emanated from the hilt and let out a buzzing sound. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw the blade and took in what it looked like before he widened his eyes. "The sword of the Thunder God," Naruto whispered. "Haha, so you've heard of this blade. Yes, this is the legendary sword of the Thunder God, the very blade wielded by the wizard Saint Tobirama Senju himself. With this sword in my possession, I will be unstoppable," Aoi declared and started laughing like a madman. Naruto had looked at Aoi as if the man had lost his mind and decided to put this guy in his place before he really went off his nut. As he brought one of his hands out of his cloak the 4 henchmen surrounding Naruto summoned some guns and swords and pointed them at the blonde, ready to act if he did anything. "Why are you all so jumpy?" "I'm just stretching my arm," Naruto said with a laid-back look on his face as Aoi walked up to him and pointed the blade at his throat. "You and I both know that's not true. I know that you are a mage, I don't know what kind of magic that you use, and I don't intend to find out. Aoi said as he raised the sword above his head and brought it down towards Naruto's head. Clang. Everyone looked wide-eyed as they all saw Aoi's strike being blocked by a blade that had appeared out of nowhere and was currently being held in Naruto's mouth as the blonde smirked. What's the matter, you look surprised. Naruto commented on Aoi's shocked look. Did you really think that just because you hold in your hands one of the most powerful swords in the land that you would be unstoppable? How pathetic. Aoi got out of his previous shock and jumped back from the blonde and glared at him. You think you're a tough guy, huh? Kill him. I want this street stained with his blood. The henchmen quickly shook off their initial shock and complied to their boss's order and raised their weapons at the blonde, ready to end his life. Before they could do anything, however, a golden magic circle appeared in front of Naruto's outstretched hand and 4 golden chain with grappling hooks on them shoot out of it and made their way towards the henchmen and grabbed hold of their arms. Naruto smirked as he felt each grapple grab a hold of each of the gang members and pull the chain and lifted them into the sky. Aoi looked at what the blonde did and got angry before he started charging at him with his sword raised and let out a battle cry. Naruto saw the pathetic attempt to attack him and swung the chains around, effectively moving the 4 human wrecking balls and smashing them into Aoi, who joined them as Naruto flicked his wrist and made another chain that attached itself to the arm holding the Thunder God's sword. Naruto lifted his arm up in the air as the chains and humans followed and let them hover there for a minute before Naruto swung them down, causing the 5 men to plummet before hitting the pavement. Hard. Naruto watched as dust rose up from the point of impact and cancelled his magic, making the chains disappear. Naruto took a step forward and noticed that his foot hit something and looked down to see the sword of the Thunder God's handle and picked it up. Putting the sword away for later, Naruto continued to walk towards the newly created crater and looked down to see the knocked out forms of the gang as they twitched every so often and arcs of electricity pulsed across them, most likely from the Thunder God's sword. The people on the street on the other hand were shocked at what just happened. The gang that had been terrorizing their town for the last couple of years were defeated right before their eyes. And by a child no less. After the townspeople got over their shock they broke out into cheers, saying that they were free. Naruto looked at them in confusion before some of them ran up to him and started thanking him. Come on people, give the boy some room. A voice from the crowd said as they were about to crowd around Naruto and the blonde saw a man walking towards him. He had short spiky black hair and black eyes. He had a small white rope tied around his head which was tied on the right side of his head and a small X-shaped scar on his chin. He wore a black t-shirt that had a white outline and a white pair of pants. He also had scars on his arms. Thank you for helping us, my name is Kaiza. The man introduced himself as Naruto nodded to him. No problem, but why are you thanking me? I should explain. I heard those men talking about you being sent here to deal with a bandit problem, yes? Kaiza asked as Naruto nodded. Well, the truth is that I sent the request for help. You sent it? Naruto asked. Yes, you see these men along with another came into this town 2 years ago and started to cause trouble and destroy our houses and marketplaces. We tried to stop them ourselves, but we didn't know they were mages at the time and they paid the price. Many were wounded, but worst thing they did was put 10 people in the hospital and they are still there with broken legs and arms. After that they took one of them and killed him right in front of the whole town. They told us that the same would happen to us if we told anyone what was happening here and we all kept our mouths shut in fear that not only our lives but the lives of our families and loved ones would be in danger. Kaiza explained as Naruto clenched his fists under his cloak and his pupils began to become slitted. A couple of days ago I saw a couple of the mayor's men talking on the docks about enslaving our people in his cellar and I had enough of it. I sent out the request in hopes that a strong group of mages would help us with that problem and now you're here. So will you help us? Kaiza asked as the crowd became silent and looked toward the blonde mage for an answer. Naruto stood there quietly as his eyes were covered by his bangs before he looked up towards the townspeople with a determined look in his eye. You don't even have to ask. Naruto said calmly as the crowd cheered once again and Kaiza nodded towards Naruto as they both started to walk towards the town hall, intent on ending the town's suffering once and for all. What do you mean they failed? The fat mayor no as Jerma shouted at his assistant who was currently wearing a typical maid outfit and was shaking at the sight of the angered man in front of her. There's no way that they could lose against a brat like that. Major not. But that what our reports say hhhh. The girl screamed as her was backhanded by Jerma who had a furious look on his face. Quiet you bitch. That's what I get for hiring a bunch of weakling like that anyway. Seems like that saying is true, if you want something done, you've got to do it yourself. Jerma said as he ignored the crying girl on the floor and looked towards a portrait of himself that hung on the wall. Suddenly the whole building began to shake and large explosion could be heard both inside and outside. What's happening? The fat man shouted as he rushed toward the window and looked outside. He widened his eyes as he saw several bonfires outside on the street and the whole townspeople fighting off his guards in one. What the he said as he saw more of this men lose and the people push past and rush into the hall. What the hell is going on? Jerma shouted before he heard fighting outside his office and turned towards the doors. Stop him. Where did he go? Over there. Fire. Ah. He's a monster. The two occupants in the room heard it go quiet outside before they heard footsteps getting closer towards them. Then they suddenly stopped. Just as Jerma was about to take a step forward, the doors to the office suddenly broke right off their hinges and were sent flying straight past him and crashed into the window behind him. Jerma slowly turned his head around to look at the doors and saw that two of his guards were embedded into the wooden doors and knocked out cold. About what you said before, a voice from the doorway spoke up as Jerma and the girls spun their heads around and saw Naruto walking in, still with his cloak on, with a smirk on his face before he stopped beside the girl and spoke again. What the hell is going on? Why you? Jerma growled out as he saw the same blonde from earlier. Who is he? The girl, though, as she saw Naruto, looked towards her and smiled, which caused her to blush a little. Are you okay? Naruto asked sincerely as he held a hand out towards the girl. Why yes, I am. The girl said as she held his hand and was helped up by the boy. That's good. Now can you wait outside please, Naruto said as he turned away from her and narrowed his eyes at Jerma and released a portion of his magical energy, which caused the fat pig to sweat nervously as he felt an overbearing weight bear down on him. I have to do some house cleaning of my own. The girl nodded as she too felt the blonde's magical energy, even though it wasn't directed at her, and quickly exited the room before something bad happened. Naruto kept his eyes narrowed as he slowly started walking towards the bald man, his magical energy steadily increasing with each step. Jerma was sweating like a real pig by now and slowly shuffled backward until he tripped on his carpet and fell to the floor. Seeing that the blonde was still walking towards him, he tried to buy some time for backup to arrive. Why are you doing this? Why are you helping these people? They don't have any money to pay you, you're a mage, right? You work for money. So why are you attacking me? Jerma asked desperately. I'm not doing this for money, Naruto said with an emotionless face. I'm doing this because I can't stand people like you who prey on the weak and kill to show their superiority. It makes me sick to think that we are the same species. See, come on, can't we work something out? I can give you anything that you want. Money. Power. Land. Women. Naruto kept a blank face as Jerma gulped. Men. Naruto narrowed his eyes even more if it were possible. I can't believe you just asked me that, Naruto said as he bent his legs. Fire bullet. Jerma shouted as he held out his hand and sent out a large bullet-like stream of fire towards the blonde. Not a second later he was hit square in the face as Naruto rushed through the fire and his fist impacted with flesh. Naruto kept pushing with all his strength and sent Jerma flying out of the window and toward the center of the large crowd outside. Outside with said crowd, the townspeople kept pushing forwards as Jerma's men tried to push them back and were barely able to do so. They kept pushing until they heard the sound of glass breaking from one of the windows upstairs, followed by a large crashing sound coming from the center of the crowd. Everyone stopped fighting and looked towards the source of the sound and saw a cloud of dust rising up from a newly formed crater in the town square. As the dust cleared, everyone widened their eyes as they saw Jerma in the middle of the crater, with blood running down his swollen face and unconscious. Before anyone could comment on what they saw, Naruto teleported down towards where Jerma was and looked at him with a blank face before he looked towards the crowd. Unless any of you who work for this man wants to end up in the same condition, I suggest you all surrender quietly before I make you. Naruto threatened the members of Jerma's group as they all gulped and put their hands up and dropped all of their weapons. The townspeople cheered as victory was theirs, while Kaiza walked through the crowd and to the crater containing the blonde mage and his opponent and smiled. Naruto looked up towards Kaiza and smiled before looked towards Jerma and summoned a pair of handcuffs. He was going away for a long time. 3 days later. Peace had once again returned to the small town once things had quietened down from the success of the town's small coup d'etat, and things could never be happier for the people living there. Buildings were being rebuilt, people no longer crowded the streets, and children ran and played happily once more. All of the people that voluntarily helped Jerma and his rule were put in prison until the Rune Knights could arrive and send them off to jail for the crimes that they have committed, even the mages that Jerma hired, and Jerma himself would not be able to escape as Naruto had put runes on them that prevent them from using their magic and restricting their movements. Naruto had been using the last couple of days helping the people of the town out with all the reconstruction with the help of his replication magic and looking through the town hall that Jerma had used as a base of operations and seeing what could be given to the townspeople to help them rebuild, and he wasn't disappointed. The building was full of money, food and other handy objects that had helped the people bring life back into their town and tourists start visiting again. He had also found that Germa had quite the collection of book about different types of magic, including lost ones, and was further surprised when he found hidden behind a large safe in the basement was a dragon lacrima that he had just thrown into a random corner and didn't even bother to look at it. It was his now though. As of now Naruto could currently be seen standing in front of the town and facing the townspeople as they came to see him off and wish him a happy journey. It has been a pleasure staying here with you all and helping out in your time of need, but I'm afraid I must be on my way. Naruto said as he bowed his head. It was a pleasure having you here, Naruto-san. We can't thank you enough for what you have done for us. Kaiza said as he stepped forward and bowed towards Naruto as the rest of the people did as well. Just as Naruto was about to speak again he saw some of the people in the crowd moving as if they were being shoved and saw the girl he helped save the other day push her way through the adults before falling down on the ground and moaned in pain a little. Standing up and brushing herself off, the girl then made her way towards Naruto and stopped in front of him. Do you really have to go, Naruto-kun? The girl said sadly as Naruto knelt down a little and patted the girl on the head. Yes, I have to go, Shizuka-chan. 3. I can't stay here forever, I'm a mage, I'm meant to travel the world and meet new people. But I promise you that I will come back and visit you, okay? Naruto reassured the girl as Shizuka nodded sadly before digging into her pocket and held out her hand to show she was holding 3 keys. In that case, you can use these to help you in your travels. I found them in Germa's office and thought you might need them. He said that they were celestial spirit keys. Shizuka said as Naruto waved his hands around in a no-type manner. I don't need those, really. You don't need to give me anything. Naruto said before he felt a hand grasp his shoulder and looked to see it was Kaiza. I think it's a great gift actually. We don't have enough money for what the mission said anyway, but I think this might cover it, don't you think? Kaiza said as Naruto sighed before smiling at Shizuka and accepted the keys. Naruto smiled once again as he started to make his way out of town and waved to the townspeople as he left. I will see you guys whenever I can and thank you for the gift, Shizuka-chan. Naruto shouted as Shizuka and Kaiza smile, but the latters faltered at what Naruto said next. And Kaiza, go for that woman you told me about. I want a baby brother or sister when I get back, you hear? You damn brat. Get out of here already. Kaiza shouted as the townspeople laughed at the scene in front of them before leaving to go back to work. After walking for a couple of minutes Naruto stopped at a clearing not too far away from the town and decided to see the keys that Shizuka had given him. Taking them out of his pants pocket, Naruto saw that there were 2 golden gate keys and 1 silver key with different symbols and designs on them, but recognized the golden ones right away. From what I remember from those books Kacchan made me read, these 2 are called the Zodiac keys since they can summon 2 of the 12 Zodiac spirits. Well, the silver one is a common key, but a rare one since I don't recognize it. Maybe I should form a contract with them. Naruto thought as he picked the silver key first and put the other 2 away. Naruto channeled some of his magic into the key and a magic circle appeared beneath him before a cloud of smoke formed in front of him. When it cleared away Naruto saw a spiky blonde-haired girl with green eyes and faint pink markings on her cheeks, wearing an off-the-shoulders garment that extends to her mid-thighs and ends up as a skirt. It is colored blue, with pink trimmings and a few touches of yellow. She also wears boots reaching halfway up her thighs with a very strange-looking hat with the same color scheme and an impressive bust, and held a blue-colored wand in her hand with a spiral on the end of it. All in all, she looked like a beautiful magician that one would see at parades and Halloween. The girl opened her eyes and jumped in excitement. I've finally been summoned, yay. The magician girl said in joy. She looks around and she stops when she sees her key in Naruto's hand. She then goes over and asks, did you summon me? She asked. Yes, I did. My name is Naruto. Naruto introduced himself before the blonde-haired girl took a hold of his left arm and buried it between her bust. My name's Mana, the dark magician girl. I have Sundays and Mondays off, but I can be summoned any other time for your needs, cutie. Mana said as Naruto blushed from the contact his new spirit made. He had been living in a realm full of dragons most of his life, and the only female human he saw was his mother, and only had contact with other people when he would do mission requests, and even then he didn't have the time to talk to much girls around his age or older. That's fine. And now can you please let go of my arm, I still have 2 more spirits to summon. Naruto slightly stuttered as Mana smirked slightly before it turned into an innocent smile, and she buried his arm into her breasts and pouted. MOU, but I want to hug my new master a little longer. She said in an almost childlike voice as Naruto's blush increased before he sighed and tried to calm himself down. Seeing that the floating magical girl was not going to let go anytime soon, Naruto just ignored her for the time being and bring out one of the golden key and pushed his magic into it. A moment later a bright light appeared and revealed a cute girl with short pink hair and blue eyes. She wears a typical maid outfit consisting of a black undercoat and a white frilled trim apron and had shackles with chains around her wrist. "Hello, my name is Virgo, are you my new master?" Virgo asked as Naruto smiled towards her. "Yes, my name is Naruto and this is my other spirit Mana." Naruto introduced himself and Mana to the maiden spirit. "May I call you master?" Virgo asked as Naruto scratched the back of his head. "That makes me feel uncomfortable," Naruto said. "Prince?" "Well, technically I would kind of be one, sure." Naruto agreed. "Well, Prince, I cannot be summoned on Sundays, but I am free from Monday to Saturday for personal use. My abilities are earth magic and chain magic. Is there anything you would like me to do?" Virgo asked. Naruto shook his head. "Not at the moment, Virgo-chan. You can leave now, huh?" Naruto stated before he heard one of the bushes near them shake before a man popped out and fell to the ground. "Damn it." The man said as he stood up and dusted himself off. "I thought I would never get away from those rune knights. Heh, to think me life would be ruined by a dumbass kid." The man rambled on before he saw the three people in the clearing and started to sweat when he looked towards the blonde. "Don't I know you?" Naruto asked. Me? I've never seen you before." The man said nervously before slowly taking a step back. "Yes, I have." Naruto said as he narrowed his eyes at the man. "You are one of the guards I saw protecting that pig Germa. How did you escape?" Naruto threatened the man as he just began to sweat like crazy before taking off running. "Actually, Virgo-chan, Mana-chan. You could do something for me." Naruto said as the two spirits alluded to him and went to work. As the man was running away he was cursing his luck at running into the blonde mage and ran as fast as he could to try and get away from him. He was stopped however when he suddenly fell into a large hole in the ground. "Ah, what the hell?" he shouted before he felt something wrap around his waist and looked down to see some kind of purple-colored energy holding him before he was lifted out of the hole and came face to face with Naruto, who had a smirk on his face and cracked his knuckles slowly. "So then, you were about to tell me something." Naruto said that the man looked like an ant before the 12-year-old. Meanwhile in the background Virgo had a slight tint of pink on her cheeks at the sight of her new master threatening the poor soul. "Why yes sir." The man squeaked out as he told Naruto about how the Rune Knights had come to the town to collect the prisoners but had trouble with Aoi as he kept thrashing about and shouting about a blonde-haired bastard cheating. He then told him about how he used a distraction to slip out of the Knights camp and run out here and faced him. When he had finished talking to the blonde, Naruto looked at the man for a second before looking towards Virgo. "Virgo-chan, you said you use chain magic, right?" Naruto asked as Virgo nodded. "Can you make some shackles for him then? I'm taking him back to the Rune Knights." "Yes, my prince." Virgo said as she summoned up some shackles in her hands and moved over towards the man. Wait, how about we make a deal?" the man asked. "We have nothing to talk about." "Yes we do. I know something the Rune Knights don't." "And what would that be exactly?" Naruto asked curiously. "For the last couple of years we have been shipping people out of the town. Men, women and children of all ages. Germa and his men have been working with some dark people and send them to some island off the coast." The man said as Naruto narrowed his eyes at the information. "I don't know much about what is happening there, but I do know that it's not good." "What is this place called?" Naruto asked the man. "It is called the Tower of Heaven. I know where it is, if you let me go I will show you where it is." The man said with a nervous smile as Naruto looked at him with a blank look before sighing. "Fine." Naruto said and lifted the man off the ground and looked him in the eye. "But if you are tricking me, I swear you will regret it." Naruto emphasized his point by releasing a large amount of his magical energy. The other three occupants in the clearing widened their eyes at the amount of power released by the young mage and had different reactions. The man looked like he was going to shit himself when he felt the power and couldn't stop sweating at the intense stare the blonde gave. Meanwhile the two celestial spirits looked at their key holder with wide eye and both subconsciously licked their lips at the mage's power. The man nodded rapidly before Naruto let him go and looked towards the sun in the sky. "Something tell me something important will happen. And I happen to be in the middle of it, just great." After walking for a couple of minutes Naruto stopped at a clearing not too far away from the town and decided to see the keys that Shizuka had given him. Taking them out of his pants pocket, Naruto saw that there were 2 golden gate keys and 1 silver key with different symbols and designs on them, but recognized the golden ones right away. "From what I remember from those books Kachan made me read, these 2 are called the Zodiac keys since they can summon 2 of the 12 Zodiac spirits. Well, the silver one is a common key, but a rare one since I don't recognize it. Maybe I should form a contract with them." Naruto thought as he picked the silver key first and put the other 2 away. Naruto channeled some of his magic into the key and a magic circle appeared beneath him before a cloud of smoke formed in front of him. When it cleared away, Naruto saw a spiky blonde-haired girl with green eyes and faint pink markings on her cheeks, wearing an off-the-shoulders garment that extends to her mid-thighs and ends up as a skirt. It is colored blue, with pink trimmings and a few touches of yellow. She also wears boots reaching halfway up her thighs with a very strange-looking hat with the same color scheme and an impressive bust, and held a blue-colored wand in her hand with a spiral on the end of it. All in all, she looked like a beautiful magician that one would see at parades and Halloween. The girl opened her eyes and jumped in excitement. "I've finally been summoned, yay." The magician girl said in joy. She looks around and she stops when she sees her key in Naruto's hand. She then goes over and asks, "Did you summon me?" She asked. "Yes, I did. My name is Naruto." Naruto introduced himself before the blonde-haired girl took a hold of his left arm and buried it between her bust. "My name's Mana," the dark magician girl. "I have Sundays and Mondays off, but I can be summoned any other time for your needs, cutie." Mana said as Naruto blushed from the contact his new spirit made. He had been living in a realm full of dragons most of his life, and the only female human he saw was his mother, and only had contact with other people when he would do mission requests, and even then he didn't have the time to talk to much girls around his age or older. That's fine. And now can you please let go of my arm, I still have 2 more spirits to summon." Naruto slightly stuttered as Mana smirked slightly before it turned into an innocent smile, and she buried his arm into her breasts and pouted. But I want to hug my new master a little longer," she said in an almost childlike voice as Naruto's blush increased before he sighed and tried to calm himself down. Seeing that the floating magical girl was not going to let go anytime soon, Naruto just ignored her for the time being and bring out one of the golden key and pushed his magic into it. A moment later a bright light appeared and revealed a cute girl with short pink hair and blue eyes. She wears a typical maid outfit consisting of a black undercoat and a white frilled trim apron and had shackles with chains around her wrist. "Hello, my name is Virgo, are you my new master?" Virgo asked as Naruto smiled towards her. "Yes, my name is Naruto and this is my other spirit Mana." Naruto introduced himself and Mana to the maiden spirit. "May I call you master?" Virgo asked as Naruto scratched the back of his head. "That makes me feel uncomfortable," Naruto said. "Prince?" "Well, technically I would kind of be one, sure." Naruto agreed. "Well, Prince, I cannot be summoned on Sundays, but I am free from Monday to Saturday for personal use. My abilities are earth magic and chain magic. Is there anything you would like me to do?" Virgo asked. Naruto shook his head. "Not at the moment, Virgo-chan. You can leave now, huh?" Naruto stated before he heard one of the bushes near them shake before a man popped out and fell to the ground. "Damn it," the man said as he stood up and dusted himself off. "I thought I would never get away from those rune knights. Heh, to think me life would be ruined by a dumbass kid." The man rambled on before he saw the 3 people in the clearing and started to sweat when he looked towards the blonde. "Don't I know you?" Naruto asked. Me? I've never seen you before." The man said nervously before slowly taking a step back. "Yes, I have," Naruto said as he narrowed his eyes at the man. "You're one of the guards I saw protecting that pig Germa. How did you escape?" Naruto threatened the man as he just began to sweat like crazy before taking off running. "Actually, Virgo-chan, Mana-chan. You could do something for me," Naruto said as the 2 spirits alluded to him and went to work. As the man was running away he was cursing his luck at running into the blonde mage and ran as fast as he could to try and get away from him. He was stopped however when he suddenly fell into a large hole in the ground. "Ah, what the hell?" he shouted before he felt something wrap around his waist and looked down to see some kind of purple-colored energy holding him before he was lifted out of the hole and came face to face with Naruto, who had a smirk on his face and cracked his knuckles slowly. "So then, you were about to tell me something," Naruto said that the man looked like an ant before the 13-year-old. Meanwhile in the background Virgo had a slight tint of pink on her cheeks at the sight of her new master threatening the poor soul. "Why yes sir," the man squeaked out as he told Naruto about how the Rune Knights had come to the town to collect the prisoners but had trouble with Aoi as he kept thrashing about and shouting about a blonde-haired bastard cheating. He then told him about how he used a distraction to slip out of the Knights camp and run out here and faced him. When he had finished talking to the blonde, Naruto looked at the man for a second before looking towards Virgo. "Virgo-chan, you said you use chain magic, right?" Naruto asked as Virgo nodded. "Can you make some shackles for him then? I'm taking him back to the Rune Knights." "Yes, my prince," Virgo said as she summoned up some shackles in her hands and moved over towards the man. Wait, how about we make a deal?" the man asked. "We have nothing to talk about." "Yes we do. I know something the Rune Knights don't." "And what would that be exactly?" Naruto asked curiously. "For the last couple of years we have been shipping people out of the town. Men, women and children of all ages. Germa and his men have been working with some dark people and send them to some island off the coast. The man said as Naruto narrowed his eyes at the information. I don't know much about what is happening there, but I do know that it's not good. What is this place called? Naruto asked the man. It is called the Tower of Heaven. I know where it is, if you let me go I will show you where it is. The man said with a nervous smile as Naruto looked at him with a blank look before sighing. Fine. Naruto said and lifted the man off the ground and looked him in the eye. But if you are tricking me, I swear you will regret it. Naruto emphasized his point by releasing a large amount of his magical energy. The other three occupants in the clearing widened their eyes at the amount of power released by the young mage and had different reactions. The man looked like he was going to shit himself when he felt the power and couldn't stop sweating at the intense stare the blonde gave. Meanwhile the two celestial spirits looked at their key holder with wide eye and both subconsciously licked their lips at the mage's power. The man nodded rapidly before Naruto let him go and looked towards the sun in the sky. Something tell me something important will happen. And I happen to be in the middle of it, just great. Chapter 3. Miles from Tower of Heaven. Naruto stood quietly as he looked over the vast blue ocean during the night. 2 days had passed since he had left Wave Town and was told about the monstrous construction known as the Tower of Heaven. Naruto dug his nails into the railing of the ship he was on as he thought back to what the mage he had captured said about there been slaves taken to the tower daily and treated as nothing but animals. The way Naruto had been raised by his parents and his dragon parents, he found this disturbing and inhuman. He was raised to treasure all life no matter how small or insignificant it was, and it made his blood boil to think that being of his own race could do such thing to each other. We're almost there, sir. A voice said that brought Naruto out of his thoughts. Naruto turned around and saw the man that he had taken as prisoner, still in shackles, standing behind him while pointing out to a specific part of the ocean. Naruto nodded as he looked out towards where the man was pointing and saw that the whole sea was dark with clouds blocking out the light in the whole area. He takes a sniff of the air around him and narrows his eyes. What is this feeling? The air smells like death. Naruto thought. The sound of something hitting the deck caught Naruto's attention as he turned around and saw a dead bird on deck. What Naruto started before he heard the sound of splashing water and walked over towards the railing. Looking over the railing Naruto saw dead birds and fish in the water. What is going on here? The blonde asked. It's the Tower of Heaven. The man said. Naruto looked over at the man and told him to explain. From what I've heard the tower gives off some sort of dark magical energy that kills off any wildlife around it. I don't know why though, the stuff they talked about sickened me so I didn't hear them out. And you still worked for them? Naruto said. I had to. People will do nasty things for money, I may steal people, but I don't know what happens after I had them off and frankly I don't care. The man said before he was knocked out by Naruto hitting him over the head, sick of the man talking already. Naruto walked up to the front of the boat and looked towards the source of the death. The Tower of Heaven. The tower appeared very chaotic and asymmetrical with its twisted body and sporadically jutting sides and looked like it was made up of many types of pipes twisting and turning with different lengths and sizes overlapping with each other. Naruto could feel his stomach almost turning over inside of him and making him sick as he got closer towards the place. Seeing that he was nearing land, Naruto went to grab the anchor and prepared for docking. Tower of Heaven. Please sir, can we have some? Smack. AHH. Quiet you stupid brat. You slaves don't deserve anything. A guard on the shore yelled at a young white-haired girl who was wearing nothing but rags as she huddled on the ground crying her eyes out while some of the people around her checked to see if she was okay. You should all be grateful, soon you will all be sacrificed in order to revive our master Zeref. So I suggest that you get used to this. The guard said with a sickening smirk as a maroon-haired boy growled at him. You got something to say brat? That's enough Mike, we have some company. Another guard walking up to him said as he pointed out to the sea and saw a ship approaching. That's strange, we weren't expecting any more slaves until next week. Who cares? The more that we have the quicker we are to reviving Lord Zeref. The unnamed guard said as they walked over to the boat as it docked. As they walked towards the ship they noticed that there was no one on the deck to greet them and got their weapons ready. They saw that the anchor was already down and slowly walked on board. This ship is empty, something's not right here. The guard said. You're right Sam, look out for anything. Mike said. Yes, there might be someone hiding on board. Another voice said from behind them. He's right. Be careful. Sam said as Mike nodded and walked forward. They both stopped for a moment and looked at each other. Did you say that? Sam asked. No, I thought you did. Mike said. That's strange. A voice said from in front of them as they looked forwards and saw a smiling Naruto. Hi. Back on shore the maroon-haired boy had finished helping the young girl up while the crowd around them looked at them in sadness. No children their age should be in a place like this. They then heard something explode and looked towards the recently docked ship and saw a stream of fire erupt for the deck before it vanished and left nothing but smoke behind. The crowd looked at the ship with confused looks on their faces before they felt the ground behind them shake and turned around to see the two guards from earlier knock out and covered in soot. What happened to them? One of the slaves asked in shock. That would be me, sorry. Naruto's voice rang out as the crowd looked towards him as he was now dressed in what he called his battle clothing. It consisted of a plain white t-shirt underneath a sleeveless gold-trimmed white jacket with his arm guards still on, slightly baggy white pants with golden lines running down each leg with a black belt holding them up. On his feet he wore black open-toed sandals just like his father wore and also had two dagger-like blades strapped to his sides held by a second belt with a large red swirl on the silver buckle over both hips. The people snapped out of their shock and looked at the young teen as he walked up to them and stopped in front of the two children on the ground. "Are you two okay?" he asked. "Yeah, we're fine. Thank you for the help," the maroon-haired boy said as he helped the white-haired girl up. "I heard what was happening here and I came to help. My name's Naruto." Naruto introduced himself and he held out a hand for the boy to shake. "My name's Eric and this is Serrano, but she likes to be called Angel," Eric said as he shook Naruto's hand. Naruto noticed the bruise on Angel's face and crouched down to her level. "Are you okay? That looks like it hurts." It's fine. It's just a scratch." Angel tried to turn away from Naruto as he cupped her cheek and turned her head to face him. "No it's not, just stay still okay?" Naruto reassured her as he put a hand on her cheek and watched her wince. The crowd then saw steam being emitted from his hand before his hand became encased in it. His hand stayed there for a minute before the steam stopped and Naruto removed his hand and revealed that the bruise on Angel's face was gone. "There we go, good as new," Naruto said trying to brighten up the mood around them, but the atmosphere of the tower was not helping him at all. "Now if you all excuse me I have a tower to destroy and people to free." Naruto started walking towards the tower but felt a small pair of arms wrap around of him and looked down to see Angel standing there with her face buried in his backside. "Don't go. You won't stand a chance against those bad men, you'll die," she sobbed. Naruto turned around and put a hand on her head and gave her a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, I'm not going to die." "Sniff promise," she said and held out a pinky. "Promise of a lifetime," Naruto said as he linked his pinky with hers and turned to Eric. "You can look after her right?" "You bet I can," Eric said as Naruto nodded to him and sent Angel over to him. He then saw the shackles on all of the people's wrists and pulled out a gate key. "Open, gate of the maiden. Virgo." The key shone brightly before Virgo emerged from the ground and bowed towards Naruto. "You called for me, my prince?" Virgo asked. "Yes Virgo, if it's not too much trouble can you help these people get their shackles off? When you are done you can help me inside and be prepared, there will be a battle going on when you do." Naruto said as Virgo nodded and went towards the group to help with the shackles as Naruto walked towards the entrance of the tower, which happened to be a pair of giant wooden doors. "Wow. These look awesome, they must be really old. I must be careful and knock gently," Naruto said to himself and he walked up to the doors and stretched his arm back and had his palm facing forward mountain dragon's crushing palm. Inside a few moments earlier. Well. What do we have here? The couple of well-behaved children trying to escape by the looks of it. Wouldn't you say? I do say. A larger and obese man wearing a uniform and cloth over his face with a strange symbol on it said as he looked towards a group of 6 children who were all scared out of their minds with a giant hole in the wall behind them. "Did you brats really think you could escape that easily? You're all going to get it now." Now, normally I'd agree with you, but we can't afford any bellets on the R system. If you tell us now who came up with the escape plan we will take them and leave the rest of you alone. What do you say? The skinny guard said as the children refused to answer. The young red-haired girl in the group was about to speak up when a blue-haired boy beat her to it. He also had a red tattoo above and under his right eye. "I made the plan and told them all what to do. It was all me." "Oh, well aren't you brave. But I know it wasn't you. It was that girl," the skinny man said as he pointed at the red-haired girl with a smirk on his face as she gained a horrified look. "Take her away," the fat one said as one of the subordinates grabbed the girl and walked away. "No. It wasn't her, it was my idea. Let hers go," the blue-haired boy shouted. "Shut up, brats," the fat man said as he shocked the boy. The girl now named Urza just looked at the boy and smiled. "Don't worry about me, I'll be okay. It's just like you said Jello, there's nothing to be afraid of." "Urza? You won't get away with this," Jello said as the fat mage smirked at him. "We just did, Br. Boom." The whole tower shook as everyone stumbled around and heard sounds coming from below on the ground floor. "What was that?" the thin mage shouted. "Sir, the entrance has been destroyed and our men are been taken out by multiple mages," a nearby subordinate said. "What? How many of them are there?" Well, that's just it sir. It was just one mage, but he just suddenly split into many. The man said nervously. One mage? You've got to be kidding me. He's not. A calm voice said from a nearby railing as everyone turned to see Naruto crouching down on the rail and looking at the guards with a serious expression on his face. That's him, sir, he's the intruder. The subordinate said. He's just a kid. What can he do? The fat mage shouted as he raised his weapon to where Naruto was. Where did he go? Ah. The fat mage heard shouting from behind him and turned around to see Naruto standing there with the rest of the mages knocked out on the floor around him and had Urza in his left arm while choking the thin mage with his right one. Naruto let the man go when he passed out and fell to the floor. The slaves around him looked at the blonde teen with wide eyes at the speed he used to take the mages down and managed to save the red-haired girl as well. All that they saw was a flash of yellow. What are you? The fat mage said as he back up against the railing before he felt someone breathing in his ear. Your destruction. A voice whispered before B was given a chop to his neck and fell. On the railing behind the man, another Naruto stood before he released a sigh and hopped off. Oi, the boss is busy dealing with the mages down bottom. We have orders to free all these people and get them out of here, start by getting these children out K. You got it. Naruto said as the other Naruto disappeared and fighting sounds started on the floor above. Naruto looked at the group and walked towards them as he put Urza down and the kids ran to cheek on her. Jello walked up to the blonde teen and bowed to him. Thank you for saving Urza, I don't know how to repay you. No problem kid, just get out of here as quickly as you can get to the ships. The real me will be out when he finishes destroying this place. Naruto said as Jello nodded and the blonde teleported to the next ledge. Jello. An older voice called out to the young boy as Jello turned around to see a lean old man with pale skin. He had long white hair which went midway down his back, 2 strands of hair stood up from the rest and pointed outwards. His eyebrows were nearly as long as the hair on his head, reaching down past his chin. He had a thick grey beard which extended down to his chest. He wore a pair of beige shorts with no shirt and had a large mark on his back. Old man Rob. What is it? Where is the young lad who was just here? Rob asked as Jello looked towards the noise of more fighting. I don't know, he said that the real him was on the ground floor and was going to destroy the tower. What did he mean by that? Jello asked. Well, I don't know exactly, but if what he said was true, then we must leave immediately. Rob said as both he and Jello hurried back to the group and made their way down. Ground floor. The original Naruto was currently weaving left and right as he ran at unexpected speeds towards a group of mages as they blasted fireballs at him in an effort to stop him. As Naruto got close to one of the mages his hand became encased in fire and punched the mage in the stomach and sent him flying into some of guards behind him. What the hell is he? He's just one kid, how much trouble can he be? I'm not as much trouble as you guys are about to be in. Energy make. Lance. Naruto held his hands together as a halo of bright blue energy spreads around his hands, then shot out arrow-headed beams of energy that hit multiple mages and destroyed the area around them. I'm not done yet. Sword make. Field of blades. Naruto placed his hands on the ground and multiple blades of different shapes and sizes popped up and skewered most of the mages that dodged his first attack. Naruto looked at the destruction in front of him with a smile before he summoned the sword of the Thunder God and looked at it. Well, let's just see what makes you really legendary. Naruto said as he pumped his magic into the hilt and the blade manifested itself. The difference was the blade was blue instead of yellow. Naruto just blinked in confusion. That's strange, but who cares? Naruto then got in a strange sword stance. He turned so that his right side was facing his opponents and stood up straight. His legs were slightly apart and bent a little at the knees. He held the sword with both hands in a horizon-like fashion by his face and looked at the growing crowd with narrowed eyes. Lightning Fang. Naruto rushed and thrust the sword forward and defeated many of the mages, as well as shocking them as well. He was where the middle of the group once was with his legs spread far apart and his right arm stretched out as the blade released sparks of electricity every now and again before he stood up straight again. Naruto whistled as he saw what the lightning blade did. That's some power, no wonder you're a legendary sword. He commented as he looked at the blade again. He could have sworn he heard the blade hum for a second in happiness before it went back to normal again. Naruto shook it off and looked around to see the prisoners being freed and fighting against the guards that tortured them for years and gaining the upper hand. He also saw Jello and the group of kids his clone saved earlier fighting as well and saw the young red-haired girl taking charge and leading the rest of the prisoners on. He felt the ground shaking beneath his feet before Virgo appeared next to him. The people have been freed and they are starting to board the ships. You should leave soon, my prince. Virgo said as Naruto shook his head at her. I'm not leaving until everyone is off this island and safe. Just keep helping everyone out. Naruto ordered Virgo as the maid nodded and went underground again. Boom. What the hell? Naruto said as he looked towards the source of the explosion and saw multiple prisoners on the ground with scorch marks around them and saw figures in the sky. They looked like mummified humans with bandages around parts of their bodies and the same cloth and headpiece on their faces. What are those? Magic troops. Multiple slaves said as they started running away. Naruto looked at the troops as they opened their mouths, and magic circles appeared in front of them that Naruto recognized as a type of fire magic. The magic circles shone brightly before the ground below exploded and sent the slaves flying. Explosion magic, huh? That's not good. Naruto commented as he saw the troops continue to fire on the slaves and prepared to take care of them. Help me. He heard a voice call out and saw the young red-haired girl from earlier trapped under some rubble from the explosion as the magic troops prepared to fire at her. Shit. Naruto cursed as he rushed over to the girl in an attempt to save her. Urza closed her eyes as she saw the flames drawing near and covered herself with her arms. When the flames reached her she heard the explosion but felt nothing, no pain whatsoever. She opened her eyes to widen them when she saw Rob standing there. "Grandpa Rob." She screamed out. "I may be old and my magic may not be strong as it once was, but I still have enough to protect my friends. I will not let you kill anyone anymore." Rob yelled out as he controlled the fire around him and sent it back at the troops. "Whoa." A dark-haired kid said. He reflected their magic back. A blonde-haired boy next to him commented as Rob fell to the floor and his body looked like it was dying. "Are you alright?" Urza asked as Rob held his side. "Yes, I may be a decrepit old man, but I still have some fight left in me," Rob said as he looked like he was cracking. "As a wizard my magic power is intertwined with my very life force and when I lost my magic at this age, I was reduced to this sorry state. But you kids you have so many years left you can't let it go to waste." "Grandpa don't." Urza tried to stop him from hurting himself, but Rob didn't listen. "I won't give up on you, not until I know that you are all safe," Rob shouted as he readied himself for the cultists as they opened fire. "Well said." Naruto said as he created an energy barrier in front of the two and protected them from the blast. He landed beside Urza and Rob and placed a hand on the old man's back. "But I think you should go with them, you are their grandpa after all," Naruto said as he channeled some of his magical energy into Rob and made the old man look good as new. My magic," Rob stuttered out. "I gave you enough so that you can make it out of here and regain your own when we get into the open ocean. But you need to leave now," Naruto explained as Rob nodded at the teen. Wait, what about you? Aren't you coming with us?" Urza asked desperately as Naruto smiled at her. "Your name's Urza, right?" Naruto asked the girl as she nodded. "You don't need to worry about me, I'll be right out as soon as I finish dealing with the trash, okay?" Urza looked at the blonde teen and nodded her head meekly before Rob escorted her away into safety. Naruto looked back at the cultists as they momentarily stopped firing at him and narrowed his eyes. "It's people like you in this world that make me sick. Enslaving men, women and children to build this abomination, unforgivable." Naruto started to release a large amount of his magical energy as the ground started to shake and he was surrounded by a rainbow-like aura. "You don't know what you're saying, kid. This tower will resurrect our god. It will resurrect Lord Zeref," one of the cultists shouted as Naruto narrowed his eyes further. "Zeref? That's right, these people should be grateful that they are a part of this. They will be sacrificed and ascend into heaven for what they are doing." The mage didn't get to finish his sentence as Naruto punched his head and slammed him into the ground. "Scum like you don't deserve to talk," he whispered out as the rest of the cultists looked at him in slight fear. "This tower is going to burn and you all along with it," Naruto shouted as he began to take in a huge breath of air and his chest puffed out. "White dragons roar." Naruto breathed out a beam of holy light and moved it around the whole tower and destroyed the walls holding it up. Outside of the tower all the people could see was a beam of white light shot out of one side of the tower before it started moving around and looked like it was cutting it in half. Naruto ended his roar when he successfully cut around the whole tower and saw it already start to lean on an angle from the cut he made. He smiled in satisfaction as he saw the cultists look at the damage with open mouths and pale faces before he coughed to gain their attention. "Now, if I were you I would get out of here before the place collapses in on itself or I start destroying it with my magic. Either way is fine with me," he said with a smirk before the cultists started running away like little girls. "Pussies." Naruto then started to make his way outside as one of his clones landed beside him and salutes. "The explosive runes are all set up, boss, what should we do now?" the clone asked. "You can all dispel yourselves now, the cultists are taken care of and I want to make sure that everyone made it out safe," Naruto said as the clone nodded and disappeared into magic particles. As Naruto got outside he saw the ship that he arrived in still docked onshore and saw the group from before with Angel, Eric and Virgo standing by them and looking at the tower with worried eyes. "What are you all still doing here? I told you all to get off this island." Naruto said as he neared the group before he was tackled by a white and red blur and fell to the ground. After Naruto got the air back that was knocked out of him, he looked down at his chest and saw Urza and Angel slightly sobbing into his chest with their hands somehow in an iron lock grip around him. We thought that something happened to you. Angel said. We saw that light coming out of the tower and thought that the guards got you. Urza said as Naruto patted both of their heads and smiled. Don't worry, that light you saw was my attack. Those guys could never hope to beat me. Naruto reassured them as they looked at him with watery eyes before he stopped patting them. Now can you two please get off me? It's kind of hard to walk like this. Both girls blushed in embarrassment before they slowly got off of him and Naruto stood up. Naruto walked over to the group and dismissed Virgo before getting on the ship and sailing away from the dark island as they all saw the tower explode and light up the sky. One day later at Kane Resort. After the successful escape from the Tower of Heaven, Naruto had led the group of escapes to the shore and had all gotten them a room in one of Fiori's most luxurious resorts and let them all have one of the most comfortable sleeps in their entire lives. Even Rob was still asleep, despite it being noon already. After the group of children woke up and found themselves in a room with a bed and not sleeping on the cold hard ground of the tower, they all burst out crying in joy, saying that it was not a dream and that they were free at last. Naruto had to calm them down a little so that they wouldn't wake any of the other people staying there and introduced himself to them all. The children were amazed that someone around their age could do all that stuff he did back in the tower and had respect for the blonde in front of them. After he had introduced himself he got to know the names of the other children as well. It was Jelil and Simon, the older brother figures of the group, along with Eric, Milana and Sho, were the youngest ones in the group and took everything they looked at with wonder and curiosity. Urza was the brave sister of the group and helped out Angel whenever she felt down or sad, and Wally was like the middle child so to speak and had a tendency to speak like an old-time mobster. Naruto had given them all some clothes that he brought from a nearby mall and ordered them as much room service as they all liked to get their energy up and the children couldn't be happier. They could now be seen wandering around Naruto's room as looked at the different things around them until the Dragon Slayer decided to ask them an important question. What are you all going to do now? The children all looked at the blonde with raised eyebrows and at the same time Rob decided to wake up from his sleep. Now that you are all free and can do whatever you want, where are you going to go? I don't know, I was thinking of traveling the country for a while. Wally said as Sho and Milana nodded with him as they wanted to as well. I want to go find my sister. She must be worried about me. Simon said in sadness. That's respectable. Naruto said before he looked at the remaining kids and old man. What about you guys, got any ideas? I have a sister as well, but I don't know where she is. When the men took me they put a bag over my head, so I have no idea where my home is. Angel said quietly. Well, why don't you kids come with me? I was going to go back to the guild I belong to. I'm sure you could stay there for as long as you like. Rob said as the children looked at him with happiness in their eyes. Naruto raised an eyebrow at the man as he didn't know he belonged to a guild. What guild do you belong to, Rob? Naruto asked. It's called Fairy Tail. Rob said as he turned around and showed the teen his guild mark. We accept anyone into the guild and think of them as family as soon as they join. They will be safe there. Fairy Tail, huh? I've heard about them, they're said to be the strongest guild in the country, right? Naruto asked as Rob nodded his head. Sounds like it might be fun. Are you kids joining as well? Naruto turned his head towards the kids. First off, we are around the same age as you. Naruto stuck out his tongue at Jelil. And second, we would like to join, right Urza? Jelil asked Aridit as she nodded her head. Yeah. Grandpa Rob told us a lot of stories about his adventures as a mage, I want to have adventures as well. She said in determination as Naruto chuckled at her. It sounds wild, what the heck? Eric said. What about you, Angel? Ayano, I don't know. What are you going to do? Angel asked Naruto as the blonde sighed as he knew what was going to happen next. I still have to finish my training as I can't go anywhere. Naruto told them. The children gained sad looks at what the blonde dragon slayer said, so sad that Angel and Urza had tears in the corner of their eyes. They rushed forward and held onto Naruto tightly and they didn't want to let go. Naruto looked at the two girls and decided to try and make them feel better. How about this, when I finish my training I will come and join you guys in the guild. Is that okay? Naruto said. The girls looked up at him with tears coming down their faces and asked PP promise. I promise. Naruto said, cheering them up a little. They smiled at him and let go of him. But if you guys want to join a guild, you need to learn some magic first and I think I can help you with that, all of you. Naruto then summoned a giant magic circle on the ground below him as the room was enveloped in light before it cleared away and stacks of books now filled the room. The children looked at the books with wonder and started looking at them as Naruto went to explain. All of these books contain different types of magic and how to perform them depending on which one you chose. So we can pick any one of these book. And we can learn magic? Sho asked as Naruto nodded. You can pick more than one if you like, but if you use multiple types of magic you need to learn and train extra hard to use them. Any of you have a specific type of magic in mind? Naruto asked them. Do you have anything to do with cats? Milana asked. Naruto tilted his head as a question mark appeared over his head. Cats? Yep, I love cats. Is there any like that? Milana questioned the blonde with stars in her eyes. Well, the only ones I can think of have to do with transformations, but Naruto then walked over to a pile of books in a corner of the room and started sifting through them and is throwing books as he did so. When he made it halfway through the pile he picked up an orange-colored book and blew some dust off it before walked back over to the brown-haired girl and handed it over to her. This is a book on a type of magic called binding. It's a caster-type magic that conjures magical tubes which can bind and restrain people or objects. They can also cancel the magic of whoever it wraps around. You can mold it into any shape that you want, like cats or cat paws for instance. Naruto explained as Milana accepted the book and went toward Rob. Excuse me, what is this? Simon asked the blonde who looked over towards the boy and saw him holding up a black-covered book. Oh, that's a book on darkness magic. Interesting choice. Naruto commented. It's a caster magic that allows you to control the element of darkness. Very nice for sneaking around and attacking, depending on how you use it. Cool. But what is a caster type? You said that binding magic is the same thing, so what is it? Simon asked as Rob answered him this time. Magic can be classified in two different ways. First there is caster type, mages that uses the magic that flows through their bodies and use it in combination with them. The second type is called holder type. Mages who use this type of magic use magical items to use magic, meaning they must have use an external source. Rob explained as Naruto nodded and brought out Virgo's key and showed it to them. You guys remember that pink-haired girl that helped you all? They all nodded their heads. Her name is Virgo, she is what is called a celestial spirit. I summoned her with this key, it's called a gate key. This is an example of holder type magic, as the key is used to summon her when I push my magic through it. Amazing. Angel said as she looked at the key in wonder. Can I do that as well? Do you want to be a celestial spirit mage, huh? Sure you can, but you need some gate keys though. And lucky for you I have one right here. Naruto said as he pulled out another golden key, but it looked different from Virgo's key. Here you go. Angel took the key and held it out in front of her and began to fidget around with it and waving it around in the air. What are you doing, Angel-chan? Naruto asked. I'm trying to summon the spirit but I won't come out. Angel whined as Naruto sighed and walked over to her. I forgot, you don't know how to properly use magic or unlocked it yet, have you? Naruto asked all of them as they shook their heads no. All of you come over here. Naruto ordered them to form a circle around him and clapped his hands together and a white magic circle appeared below them. Spirit Dragon Soul Awakening. The magic circle shone brightly as the children felt their bodies begin to feel lighter and a surge of power flow through them that made them feel like the strongest mages alive, but it quickly died down when the magic circle faded away and Naruto separated his hands. There, now you all should be able to use magic. Angel, I want you to hold out your hand in front of you and repeat after me. Naruto then told Angel some word to say to properly summon a celestial spirit that Virgo and Mana told him about and watched as she placed the key in front of her and recite the incantation. I call upon thee, in the world of the celestial spirits. Heed my call. Pass through the gate. Open, gate of the scorpion. Scorpio. Angel called out as a magic circle appeared in front of her and the spirit appeared. Scorpio is a relatively tall, lean-built, dark-skinned man with short hair that is red on one side and white on the other. His tail is a large gun that is shaped like a scorpion's tail that has the word Antares written on it. 1. He wears no shirt but has a flower-shaped collar that is red and trimmed with gold around his neck. He has a red sheet-like material around his waist that is kept up by his large belt that has the Scorpio symbol on it. He wears black shorts and has bandage-like material wrapped around his arms and legs. He had folded his middle and ring fingers back while keeping his index and little fingers extended, mimicking the pincer claws of a scorpion, and did a weird pose as he spoke. Wicked. What's up y'all? Which one of you is my new summoner? Scorpio asked as Angel stepped forward. That would be me, my name's Serrano, but you can call me Angel. It's nice to meet you. It's nice to meet you too, wicked name by the way. Anyway, I'm available from every day of the week except Mondays and Wednesdays and I specialize in sand magic. Is there anything you need now, baby? Scorpio asked as Angel shook her head. Wicked. I've got a date with my girl back home so I'll see you next time, okay? And with that Scorpio returned back to the celestial spirit world. There you go, Angel, now you're a celestial spirit mage. Nice job. Naruto praised the girl as she blushed at the compliment. Now then, who's next? You excuse me. What is this one about? Sho spoke up as he held up a book with some kind of etching on the cover. Let's see. Naruto said as he politely took the book from Sho and started reading it. After skimming through a few pages, Naruto closed the book and handed it back to Sho with a smile. It appears that you picked an interesting book. This one is on card magic. It's a holder type magic that allows you to control different types of magic cards, plus they are a fun pastime as well. Unfortunately, I don't know much about card magic, so I can't really help you, sorry. It's okay, I think I can do it on my own. Thank you. Sho said politely as he made his way towards Rob and Milana and waited for everyone to finish. What about this magic? What does it do? Wally asked next as he held a book up to Naruto's face as the blonde read out the title. Polygon magic, from what I remember it's a caster magic that turns your body into magical blocks and lets you control them. I don't know anything other than that. Naruto explained. Sweet, this will make me look dandy. Thanks. Wally said while Naruto's sweat dropped. I have a question. Eric spoke up as Naruto and everyone looked at him. What was that beam you used to destroy the tower back there? You said it was one of your attack, but what was it? Eric asked as Naruto smiled. It's a special type of magic called lost magic. It's a type of magic that hasn't been seen or used in centuries. It's called Dragon Slayer magic. Naruto explained as everyone looked at him with wide eyes. As the name suggests, it's a magic used to kill dragons. It grants me the abilities to turn my body or part of it into a dragon and give me the power to harm them if need be. That's so cool. Do you think that you can teach it to me? Eric asked excitedly but turned to sadness when Naruto shook his head. I don't know if you can learn it. I was trained by an actual dragon in the art, so I have no idea how you would do. However, Naruto trailed off as he held his hand out and summoned up the lacrima he got from Jirma's vault and looked at it with wonder. What is that? Jelil asked the blonde dragon slayer as he inspected the orb closely. It's called a lacrima. It's a magically infused substance found all over the world and can be used for different purposes. You can think of it as magic in physical form. Rob explained to the children as they nodded their heads at the information. But this isn't any old lacrima, it has traces of dragon magic inside of it. You could call it a dragon lacrima if you will. Maybe you can use the magic this way. Naruto said as Eric raised an eyebrow and asked him to explain. I've heard of people implanting certain types of lacrima into their bodies in order for them to become mages. Maybe if I implant this into you, then you theoretically could use whatever dragon slaying element it is. Are you saying I could shoot laser beams like that as well? Well, no. It depends on what element this dragon magic is. It could be fire, ice, water, wind, iron, the list goes on. But it would make you really powerful. Naruto commented as Eric grinned at the news and accepted the lacrima from the blonde as he said he would transplant it into him later. He then turned his attention to the last two occupants in the room. What about you two? Otter found anything that interests you yet? I was wondering, can you teach me the sword thing that you did? Urza's voice rang out as she looked at her. Sword thing? You mean my sword make magic? Naruto asked as Urza nodded. Sorry, but it's a special type of magic used by my family and only they can use it. But I can show you how to properly wield a sword and a magic that might help you. Naruto said as Urza looked sad at not learning the cool magic as she put it but brightened up when the blonde offered her real training and a similar type of magic instead. And what about you Jelil, find anything? Naruto asked the brunette but saw him already face first into a book and reading it without answering the blonde. Never mind. Naruto said with a sweat drop. With all the kids' magic in their hands, literally and figuratively, Naruto smiled at them before it turned sinister and cracked his knuckles. Now, I was trained by slave drivers I had the pleasure of calling my teachers and I intend to make it a student-teacher tradition. So prepare yourselves for what I call Naruto-sama's Hell Week. Mwahahaha. Naruto laughed evilly as the children gulped and thought differently about the mage in front of them and prepared themselves for the week ahead. They would then forever call the blonde-haired teen a slave driver just like his teachers before him and curse out his name to the heavens. It had been a week since Naruto had saved the former group of slaves from the hellhole once known as the Tower of Heaven and he couldn't be any happier with how alive the children looked and how they had progressed with their magic and techniques with Rob's help and guidance. They had all started to get a hold of their magic and had already started on developing them on their own. Sho had been able to channel his magic into a card and send it flying through the air on its own. Milana had been able to summon up a small string of binding rope on her first go and Wally had managed to change his arm into blocks and reform them at will. Simon had decided to use his darkness magic to blind people by covering an area in darkness like the elements should and attacking them when they are confused. Angel had summoned Scorpio a couple of times and trained with her spirit in his sand magic and bonding closer together. Urza, Eric and Jelil were another story with the blonde. After using his magic to implant the lacrima into Eric's body, the two had found out that he had indeed gained the ability to use Dragon Slayer magic and surprised a blonde that it was poison Dragon Slayer magic that Eric could use. The new Dragon Slayer is excited in learning a magic as strong as the older mages and didn't stop bugging the blonde about the types of attacks he could use. After managing to calm the boy down, Naruto told him more about Dragon Slayer magic and about the special techniques and abilities the maroon-haired boy has, like being immune to most types of poisons and the ability to eat poison to replenish his magical energy. The last one was easy for Eric as his pet snake, Cubelios, was able to feed the boy poison during his training and help him recover from any injuries he had sustained. Naruto had taught Eric the Poison Dragon's Roar and Poison Dragon's Crushing Fang and gave him a book containing the rest of the attacks and secret arts. Jelil had chosen an interesting type of magic called Heavenly Body Magic. It is a powerful form of magic that allows him to use the properties of many space-based objects for battle or being able to generate and manipulate the energy of stars from his own body. He could also cloak himself in Heavenly Body Magic that allowed him to move through the air at incredible speeds. Naruto was surprised at first by the speed the blue-haired boy could travel at, but he still needed some work at controlling it as he was nowhere near his speed or his father's teleportation magic through both of their means, too. Naruto had a fun time teaching Urza how to use a sword and knew how his mother felt when she was teaching him and helped her out whenever she got her footing wrong or she used too much power in her swing. He also started teaching her requip and was impressed when she could transport daggers into her personal dimension already. It took him a couple of weeks to do that. He was surprised to find that she could also use telekinesis, even though it was a common magic among advanced mages, and helped her in controlling it by having her lift up rocks one by one and holding them in the air for as long as she could. And the part that Naruto liked the most and the children hated was the physical training he put them through. He made them do laps around a large open field every day and spared with them in order for them to gain a proper fighting style and build up their muscles for whatever they were going to do when they left. All of their laboring in the tower helped them in the strength department for that one. But now Naruto was walking down a dirt path after saying goodbye to the group of mages young and old and making his way towards the place where he had stored the dragon's eye gem and go home to his parents, who no doubt would be worried sick about where he had been. He made his way to a rocky mountain range and stopped in front of a large boulder at the base of the mountain. He placed a hand on the stone structure and runes appeared on it for a few seconds before disappearing and took his hand off. A piece of the rock in front of him started to disappear and reveal a doorway that led into a cave behind the boulder and walked forward and disappeared in a bright rainbow light. The entrance disappeared a minute after he left and left the mountainside silent and lonely once again. Dragon Realm. The now 19-year-old Naruto walked into a clearing that his family had made their home and saw his parents down on the ground, sweating up a storm as Raijin and Benahem stood over them with a single scratch on Benahem's cheek and a small burn mark on Raijin's chest, indicating that both of his parents had gotten stronger in his time away and closer to being called human dragon slayers. 3. Naruto walked up to the pair of dragons and his parents and chuckled at the scene in front of him. "Looks like you two have been through the ringer a few times," Naruto commented on his parents' state. "Hey, honey," said Kushina getting up from the ground before kissing her son on the cheek. "How was your trip?" Naruto went on to tell his parents his whole adventure. Him helping out the people of Wave Town, defeating Aoi and Germa and gaining gate keys and a sword in the process, which Kushina told him she would look at later. He then told them all about the Tower of Heaven and how it was going to be used to resurrect Zeref if Naruto had not destroyed it and about the kids he saved and trained for the week and his promise to go to Fairy Tail when he had finished his training here. "Stopping a slave operation and giving the former slaves a good head start, huh?" asked Minato before patting his son's back. "I'm so proud of you, Naruto. You're becoming a better and stronger mage each passing day. And it sounds like you might have a girlfriend or two in the future," said Kushina tearing up. "I'm gonna be a grandmother." "Achan," Naruto whined. "Yes indeed. Since being our disciple does mean he can have more than one mate," chuckled Raijin. "I can just picture all those little drakes now." Benahem giggled as Naruto was blushing like crazy. Before steam could pop out of the blonde's ears, Raijin cleared his throat and gained everyone's attention. With all of the teasing aside, for now. Naruto glared at the dragon god when he said that. "The information about this tower is most disturbing and I sense an ulterior motive behind its purpose, but I don't know what." "What should we do, Ryu-san?" Naruto asked. "We can't do anything, you on the other hand can. You are nearly finished with your training in the Dragon Slayer arts and have more than enough knowledge and power to take on whatever Earthland throws at you, so all we can do is trust in you when the time comes," Raijin explained. "And you are almost finished with our magic as well, Naruto. You just need a few more months here then you are done," Minato said as Naruto nodded. If that's the case then I need to keep training and finish them as fast as possible. Naruto said with a fire in his eyes as his parents and step-parents looked at him with pride. Let's do this. He then ran off and into the distance as they sweat-dropped at his behavior while the women giggled. Raijin sighed and looked in the direction where his pupil ran off with an uneasy look in his eye. I hope you are strong enough for what is coming, Naruto. This is nothing but the calm before the storm, and when it hits, you will be in the center of it and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Grow strong, my pupil. Raijin said as he walked towards the Uzumaki family house and waited for his student to return. 1. I kept the wording on his tail because I want to have him connected with his constellation. 2. Minato and Naruto use the Flying Thunder God technique for runes on specially made daggers, the 3-pronged kunai for Minato and a 2-pronged for Naruto. 3. Humans who have the power to kill dragons without the use of Dragon Slayer magic. Magic and abilities. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, in order of use. Energy make magic. Molding magic using pure magical energy that is blue in color. User can mold the energy into different shapes and different sizes and can even solidify the energy if they chose. Teleportation magic. This magic allows the user to cover very large distances in the blink of an eye. It makes for an extremely fast and effective means of transportation. Naruto and Minato use this in combat when the situation requires fast actions. Chain magic. This magic allows both Naruto and Kushina to shoot long golden chains from their hands, complete with grappling hooks at the ends. They can be used in combat by launching the grappling hooks through enemies. After they have been caught, enemies can also be slammed into objects. Sword make magic. Molding magic that involves the creation and use of swords and blades for various purposes and uses in battle. This magic is also known as Masamune's metal forging magic. Sword magic. Various elemental attacks. Replication magic. A magical ability that allows Naruto to create physical copies of himself that have the same amount of magical energy as he does. Celestial spirit magic. Naruto is able to use this type of magic to summon forth celestial spirits from their world and use them in fights or for everyday activities. Fate of the Maiden. Virgo. Fate of the Dark Magician Girl. Mana. Equip. This magic allows Naruto to store items in a pocket dimension so that he can easily summon it at any time, even during battle. Naruto is able to requip different weapons in battle and even requip into armors in the midst of battle. Telekinesis. A type of magic that allows Naruto to move and take control of things with his mind and use them for whatever purpose he wishes, such as for battle. The objects that the user can control are limited to those only in the solid and liquid states of matter. Telepathy. Naruto has the ability to be able to communicate telepathically with others, disallowing any jacking of his communication to occur. He can also jack another person's telepathy if need be. Dragon slaying magic. A lost magic utilized by Dragon Slayer that allows its users to transform their physical bodies into a dragon. As a result of this, Naruto can transform his body with features of his respective elements, utilizing both offensive and defensive styles. It had been a week since Naruto had saved the former group of slaves from the hellhole once known as the Tower of Heaven, and he couldn't be any happier with how alive the children looked and how they had progressed with their magic and techniques, with Rob's help and guidance. They had all started to get a hold of their magic and had already started on developing them on their own. Sho had been able to channel his magic into a card and send it flying through the air on its own. Milana had been able to summon up a small string of binding rope on her first go, and Wally had managed to change his arm into blocks and reform them at will. Simon had decided to use his darkness magic to blind people by covering an area in darkness like the elements should and attacking them when they are confused. Angel had summoned Scorpio a couple of times and trained with her spirit in his sand magic and bonding closer together. Urza, Eric and Jello were another story with the blonde. After using his magic to implant the lacrima into Eric's body, the two had found out that he had indeed gained the ability to use Dragon Slayer magic and surprised the blonde that it was poison Dragon Slayer magic that Eric could use. The new Dragon Slayer is excited in learning a magic as strong as the older mages and didn't stop bugging the blonde about the types of attacks he could use. After managing to calm the boy down, Naruto told him more about Dragon Slayer magic and about the special techniques and abilities the maroon-haired boy has, like being immune to most types of poisons and the ability to eat poison to replenish his magical energy. The last one was easy for Eric as his pet snake, Cubelios, was able to feed the boy poison during his training and help him recover from any injuries he had sustained. Naruto had taught Eric the Poison Dragon's Roar and Poison Dragon's Crushing Fang and gave him a book containing the rest of the attacks and secret arts. Jelil had chosen an interesting type of magic called Heavenly Body Magic. It is a powerful form of magic that allows him to use the properties of many space-based objects for battle or being able to generate and manipulate the energy of stars from his own body. He could also cloak himself in heavenly body magic that allowed him to move through the air at incredible speeds. Naruto was surprised at first by the speed the blue-haired boy could travel at, but he still needed some work at controlling it and was nowhere near the speed of his father's teleportation magic through both of their means. Naruto had a fun time teaching Urza how to use a sword and knew how his mother felt when she was teaching him and helped her out whenever she got her footing wrong or she used too much power in her swing. He also started teaching her requip and was impressed when she could transport daggers into her personal dimension already. It took him a couple of weeks to do that. He was surprised to find that she could also use telekinesis, even though it was a common magic among advanced mages, and helped her in controlling it by having her lift up rocks one by one and holding them in the air for as long as she could. And the part that Naruto liked the most and the children hated was the physical training he put them through. He made them do laps around a large open field every day and spared with them in order for them to gain a proper fighting style and build up their muscles for whatever they were going to do when they left. All of their laboring in the tower helped them in the strength department for that one. But now Naruto was walking down a dirt path after saying goodbye to the group of mages young and old and making his way towards the place where he had stored the dragon's eye gem and go home to his parents, who no doubt would be worried sick about where he had been. He made his way to a rocky mountain range and stopped in front of a large boulder at the base of the mountain. He placed a hand on the stone structure and runes appeared on it for a few seconds before disappearing and took his hand off. The piece of the rock in front of him started to disappear and reveal a doorway that led into a cave behind the boulder and walked forward and disappeared in a bright rainbow light. The entrance disappeared a minute after he left and left the mountainside silent and lonely once again. Dragon Realm. The now 19-year-old Naruto walked into a clearing that his family had made their home and saw his parents down on the ground, sweating up a storm as Raijin and Benahem stood over them with a single scratch on Benahem's cheek and a small burn mark on Raijin's chest, indicating that both of his parents had gotten stronger in his time away and closer to being called human dragon slayers. Naruto walked up to the pair of dragons and his parents and chuckled at the scene in front of him. "Looks like you two have been through the ringer a few times," Naruto commented on his parents' state. "Hey, honey," said Kushina getting up from the ground before kissing her son on the cheek. "How was your trip?" Naruto went on to tell his parents his whole adventure. Him helping out the people of Wave Town, defeating Aoi and Germa and gaining a sword and gate keys in the process, which Kushina told him she would look at later. He then told them all about the Tower of Heaven and how it was going to be used to resurrect Zeref if Naruto had not destroyed it and about the kids he saved and trained for the week and his promise to go to Fairy Tail when he had finished his training here. "Stopping a slave operation and giving the former slaves a good head start, huh?" asked Minato before patting his son's back. "I'm so proud of you, Naruto. You're becoming a better and stronger mage each passing day. And it sounds like you might have a girlfriend or two in the future," said Kushina tearing up. "I'm gonna be a grandmother." "Achan," Naruto whined. "Yes indeed. Since being our disciple does mean he can have more than one mate," chuckled Raijin. "I can just picture all those little drakes now." Benahem giggled as Naruto was blushing like crazy. Before steam could pop out of the blonde's ears, Raijin cleared his throat and gained everyone's attention. With all of the teasing aside, for now. Naruto glared at the dragon god when he said that. "The information about this tower is most disturbing and I sense an ulterior motive behind its purpose, but I don't know what." "What should we do, Ryu-san?" Naruto asked. "We can't do anything, you on the other hand can. You are nearly finished with your training in the Dragon Slayer arts and have more than enough knowledge and power to take on whatever Earthland throws at you, so all we can do is trust in you when the time comes," Raijin explained. "And you are almost finished with our magic as well, Naruto. You just need a few more months here then you are done," Minato said as Naruto nodded. "If that's the case then I need to keep training and finish them as fast as possible," Naruto said with a fire in his eyes as his parents and step-parents looked at him with pride. "Let's do this." He then ran off and into the distance as they sweat-dropped at his behavior while the women giggled. Raijin sighed and looked in the direction where his pupil ran off with an uneasy look in his eye. "I hope you are strong enough for what is coming, Naruto. This is nothing but the calm before the storm and when it hits, you will be in the center of it and there is nothing you can do to stop it. Grow strong, my pupil," Raijin said as he walked towards the Uzumaki family house and waited for his student to return. Chapter 4. Dragon Realm Iron Rock Canyon. Sharp gusts of air wailed through the large chasm on a piece of land floating in the Dragon Realm as towering rock formations suddenly fell to the ground and a clear, clean surface was all that remained if where they once were. 3 blurs could be seen racing across high above the ground and flashes of gray, silver and blue heading towards one of the blurs as it seemed to dodge them send down the rock formations as a retaliation. Looking closer to the blur out in front, one could make out a familiar 23-year-old looking blonde-haired man with whisker marks on his cheeks, with a panicked look on his face, as he dodged a couple dozen swords that embedded themselves in the ground he was previously standing on. The reason why the young hero was currently running scared for his life was simple: his parents. Over the 4 years of being in the dragon realm, Naruto had mastered most of the dragon slaying art, except for one of them, and would be tested next week to see if he would be gifted with the title of Master Dragon Slayer. He had also trained day and night in his parents' magic as well, and was now being tested by both of his parents at the same time to see for themselves if how strong he has become, and they were not holding back. Naruto knew that facing both of his parents would be considered suicide by any normal mage, but Naruto was no normal mage. He knew that both of his parents were strong, as both of them were granted with the title as one of the 10 wizard saints. The strongest mages in the country and has years more experience than he does, but that didn't stop him from facing both of them head-on, and he was now regretting that decision at this very moment. He quickly created a shield of energy to stop some beams that his father created from hitting him, but didn't see the red magic circle appear behind him until it was too late. Sword make. Crimson slash. Naruto moved out of the way with a teleportation spell as a red beam shot out of the circle and nicked his side before he managed to fully transport himself to a ledge on the other side of the canyon. The beam stopped as it was 10 feet in the air and the light faded away to reveal a giant katana-like blade sticking out of the ground as Kushina jumped next to it. She was wearing a short-sleeved tan kimono-like blouse with a dark embroidered border, held closed with a black obi, a dark skirt and stockings that stopped at her thighs, along with brown sandals. She also had her hair tied up in a high ponytail and strands framing both sides of her face. She looked over at Naruto as he was crouching down on the ledge across from her holding his side where she had managed to cut him with her attack and watched as he slowly stood back up and take his hand off the wound and saw it start to heal itself. She knew that he wouldn't be hurt that badly and that there would be no scarring as her family seemed to have some sort of accelerated healing for reasons she nor Naruto did not know, but it was helpful in battle and training situations. "Ah-chan, don't you think you are going too overboard with the whole testing me thing? You almost cut me in half," Naruto complained. Almost being the key word. "I knew that you would dodge it," Kushina said as she waved a finger at her son. As she was doing this, Memodo landed beside her in his wizard saint battle attire and sighed at his wife. "The point of this test is to surprise him with attacks and hope that he wouldn't dodge them, not have faith in him," Memodo said. "What kind of bullshit answer is that? Do you want me to die?" Naruto shouted as he heard what his father said. "Sorry, but it's the truth. It wouldn't be a test otherwise," Memodo shouted as Naruto grumbled under his breath. "Now then, let's continue," Memodo said as he summoned up a 3-pointed throwing knife and chucked it at Naruto as the younger blonde ducked under it. Memodo teleported to the knife and created an energy make. Rasengan and thrusted it towards Naruto as he widened his eyes in recognition. Bam. Flying Thunder God. Level 2. Naruto thought as he quickly teleported a few feet away as the attack destroyed the ground he was previously standing on. As he reappeared, Naruto channeled magic to his hands and grasped his palms together. A halo of bright energy spreads around his hands, then it encircled them and pointed towards his father. Energy make. Lance. Naruto shot the arrow-tipped energy beam towards Memodo when a dark blue shield stopped them before they could hit. Naruto used this to change opponents and flew towards his mother as she prepared for him and sent out some chains with blades on the end of them at Naruto as he tried to dodge them in the air. After avoiding the chains in mid-air, Naruto landed near Kushina and threw a punch at her as she caught it and pushed him back. Naruto skidded back and put his arms above his head just in time to block an axe kick from his mother. The blonde stood his ground against his mother as she pushed down and the ground beneath them cracked from the pressure. Naruto shifted his body and kicked his right leg into his mother's side, making her stop her attack and sent her flying through the air before she readjusted herself and landed safely on the ground. As she looked up, she widened her eyes when she saw Naruto right in front of her with his fist raised near her face. She closed her eyes and waited for the pain to hit, but instead she heard the sound of the air moving and opened them to see Naruto not there and felt the ground shake behind her. She turned around and saw Memodo standing with his back to her with his arm outstretched, facing towards the cliffside in front of him that was currently covered with a dust cloud, most likely where he threw their son, no doubt. "Thank you, Memodo-kun, that was a close call." Kushina thanked Memodo as he looked at her and smiled. "No problem, just making sure that my lovely wife is okay," Memodo said as Kushina blushed. "Oh, you? Can you please not do this during my test?" Naruto's voice rang out as the cloud disappeared and revealed Naruto embedded in the wall of earth upside down. "It makes me physically sick seeing you two all mushy-gushy together, so please stop," Naruto pleaded as he dug himself out. "That's mean, Naru-chan," Kushina pouted. You haven't called me that in years, and children don't want to see their parent act like that in front of them. Naruto said deadpan. He then launched himself out of the wall and was enveloped in light. Requip. Light wolf armor. When the light disappeared he was now wearing his personal armors. His helmet is grey with white lines on the eye holes and a black nose. His scarf is light purple with darker purple stripes. His chest and abdominal armor is grey with 4 purple rectangles. He has a pair of white pants with 2 grey and purple knee pads and a belt wrapped around each upper thigh. His feet are wolf-shaped with a black upper part with grey outlined purple diamond on each foot and 2 pieces of the armor covering his ankles. A square sheath on the back of his belt where he stored his light swords. His shoulder pads each have the symbol of light on them. His gauntlets are grey and purple, and on his left gauntlet is a laser. His gloves are black with purple knuckle. 1. Lightsaber. Naruto pulled out one of his swords and brought it down between his parents as they jumped apart. Naruto smirked and clapped his hands together as a clone of himself appeared from magic particles and rushed at his Memodo as the real one lunged at Kushina. Memodo saw the attack coming, placed his hands in a normal molding magic pose. Energy make. Sword. Memodo blocked Naruto's light sword with his energy sword and pushed against each other in a battle of strength. You know, I may not be at your mother's level when it comes to swordsmanship, but I can hold my own against you any day of the week. That's true, but I bet you don't want a sword fight. Right? The clone questioned as Memodo nodded. The clone tried to do a leg sweep, but Memodo jumped up and dodged it before he could. The clone put the sword away and pointed its left hand at the wizard saint. Howling laser. Memodo watched as the clone fired bursts of light at him and created a shield to stop them, but the ones on the outside broke through. Memodo went for a different tactic and narrowed his eyes at the clone before he disappeared from in the air and his shield went down. Naruto stopped shooting at Memodo when he saw him disappear and turned around to find him crouched behind him with a Rasengan in hand. Direct line. Rasengan. Memodo whispered as he thrusted the ball of energy forward. The clone acted quickly and created its own Rasengan with light-based properties and collided with Memodo's as the ground was destroyed beneath them. Over with a real Naruto, he was currently clashing with Kushina as he held both of his light swords in a reverse grip in an X formation as his mother held a single katana-type sword and was slightly winning against their struggle. I knew Kachan was a strong swordsman, but this is ridiculous. How strong is she? Naruto thought as he jumped back and re-equipped his armor off. You're strong as ever, Kachan, you aren't holding back at all. Naruto commented as Kushina smirked at her pride and joy. Flattery won't help you here, son, I'm going to win this, you know. Kushina exclaimed as she raised her sword high in the air and sliced horizontally at Naruto, having crimson energy follow it. The blonde looked at the oncoming red slash with wide eyes and ducked under it as it passed over him and rippled the air as it did so. Memodo and the clone that were fighting stopped momentarily when they felt the air shift around them and looked to their side to see the slash heading towards them and screamed as they held each other and disappeared before it cut them. Naruto raised his head off the ground and looked behind him to look at the damage his mother had done and widened his eyes. Hovering in mid-air was the top half of the canyon that Kushina had slashed off and a good few meters of air separating it from the newly smoothed surface of the rock below. He couldn't help but gulp as he saw the result. Holy crap. She did that with just one swing of a normal katana. I hate to see what she can do with her personal one. Naruto thought as he saw the rubble fall down scatter throughout the canyon. He slowly stood up and watched as Memodo and his clone reappeared on the other side of the canyon and looked angry at Kushina. What the hell was that? You trying to kill us? The clone shouted as Memodo nodded his head. That was a bit much, dear, you need to be more careful. Memodo said. But I was careful, I knew you would dodge it, so I didn't need to hold back. Kushina said with an innocent face. That's not the point. Both of them shouted. Naruto just looked at the two questioningly. Aren't you two supposed to be fighting each other? Naruto asked. The two blinked before looking at each other and the position they were in and quickly separated from each other and started fighting again. Naruto shook his head and looked towards Kushina, only to find that she was not there. He then felt something grab a hold of both of his ankles and was pulled along the ground and into the air above the canyon. Naruto looked down and saw his mother's chains holding his feet and summoned a sword to cut them off, but before he could he was flung into the ground. Hard. Naruto slowly got back up and found that he had landed right a few feet in front of his mother and wiped some blood off of his chin. That's it, time to get serious. Naruto proclaimed as he raised his magical energy and positioned himself like he was grasping a sword that was strapped to his back. Black blade, moonlight. Naruto then swung his right arm forward as a katana appeared in his hand. The sword has a pure white hilt with a circular handguard, the blade itself was black with a white tint to it. Naruto then puts his left arm across his chest and summons another sword. It was a normal katana with a brown-orange handle and a guard with a 4-petal design. The blade itself is normal, but it radiated a strong magical aura around it. Autumn rain. Naruto said as he held both sword in front of him as Kushina grinned in excitement. Your strongest swords, huh? Going all out, I see. In that case, Kushina trailed off as she summoned the sword away and got into a stance like she was going to draw a sword from her waist. She raised her magical energy as a crimson aura surrounded her and a bright light appeared in her hands. Demon blade, crimson blossom. She said as another katana appeared in her hand. It was a slightly black-bladed word with a decorated black handle and a regular tsuba protruding on 4 sides. There were some bandages on the blade near the hilt. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he gazed upon his mother's sword. The demon blade, Kachan's personal and strongest sword. The reason she was given the title of Wizard Saint and got the name Red Death was mainly because of that sword. This will not be easy. Naruto thought as the aura around Kushina disappeared and started to surround her sword. I hope you're ready, Naru-chan, this will be my final attack and by the looks of it your father is finishing up as well. Kushina said as she looked over towards the other ledge and saw a giant dust cloud with 2 titanic figures' shadows in it. Now let's do this. She shouted as the aura around her sword exploded outwards and took the form of a giant blade. Naruto smirked and held both of his sword across his chest in an X-like fashion and poured his magical energy into them. Moonlight and Autumn Rain released their own magical energy, with Moonlight's being black with a white outline and Autumn Rain's being blue. Let's go. Naruto screamed as he rushed to Kushina and swung his swords down as Kushina rushed at him and swung up as their slashes collided. Boom. Clone vs Memodo. After the two separated from each other, they had a quick stare-off before they rushed at each other and threw punches at one another. They caught each other's punches as the dirt around them picked up, blocked their sights before they push off of each other and started shooting magic attacks at each other. Energy make. Knuckle. Memodo shouted as a barrage of fists made their way towards Naruto. The Dragon Slayer rolled out of the way and pointed his index and middle fingers of both hands at Memodo like gun. Energy make. Bullet. Naruto said as he fired a bullet of energy at Memodo as the older blonde dodged and waved his hands in the air. The dust around Naruto quickly dispersed and the clone widened his eyes as he saw 3 purple magic seals around him. An Amaterasu formula, the clone thought in panic. Amaterasu 38th formation. Explosion. 2, Memodo said as his palm faced towards the clone and an explosion surrounded the clone of his son. Memodo watched as his vision became blinded once again and the light from the explosion dissipated as he narrowed his eyes. Did that do it? He thought. As the dust cleared, Memodo saw the clone without his armor panting hard in the newly created crater before him as it looked at him and caught his breath. That was unexpected, I didn't think that you would use that. The clone commented as it made its way out of the crater and faced Memodo. I think we should end this, the boss has been working on a new move, specially made just for you. The clone said as it began to raise its magical pressure and a golden aura surrounded it. A technique just for me? You shouldn't have. Memodo said as he was surrounded in a golden aura as well and motioned his arms in a circular fashion before placing left hand in a praying fashion and extending his right hand down with his palm parallel to the ground. Energy make unlimited secret technique. Memodo and the clone shouted as their auras and magical energies skyrocketed and created a large dust cloud around them. As the aura encased Naruto, it started to take the form of a 3-headed, 6-armed avatar with beads around its heads with black lines and markings all over its body and was easily as taller than Raijin, with Naruto seen hovering in the middle of the avatar's chest. Asura. God of Destruction. The Naruto clone shouted. Meanwhile, behind Memodo, his aura had started to rise far above Naruto's Asura and take the form of a titanic figure, the headed hands together in a praying fashion. Thousand Prayer Song. The figure then moved its arms up and spread out as thousands of hands started to make their way from the titan's back in countless concentric rows while its 2 main hands clasped back into its prayer fashion. 3. The clone looked up at the titanic energy form while Memodo stood on its head with his hands in a relaxed prayer fashion like his creation and clicked his tongue. Damn, and here I thought that it will be easy. And just where were you hiding this monstrosity? Naruto shouted at Memodo as the older blonde smiled. You have your secrets and I have mine, and I wasn't just going to hand you over my ace in the hole, now was I? Memodo questioned the Dragon Slayer as the clone just grinned. No, that wouldn't be fun at all. He said as he lifted his arms up, his avatar's 6 arms followed as they all raised up and formed multiple Rasengans in their hands. Now let's end this. He said with a serious face as Memodo nodded and got into his proper stance and commanded the construct to attack, sending all the fist behind the titan's back at his son. Summit Enlightenment. Asura Giant Planetary Rasengan. Boom. Present. The sound of all 4 attacks clashing rang through the canyon as the middle of it was engulfed in a blinding bright light and destroyed anything in its path. When it died down, a large crater could now be seen in the middle of the canyon and a giant dust cloud around it. In the middle of the canyon, however, was a different story. Naruto could be seen kneeling on the ground, panting like a dog, as Minato and Kushina were across from him, kneeling also. Naruto looked at his parents as they had a smile on their faces before they both passed out on the ground, and Naruto raised his hands in the air. Yeah. He managed to shout before he too passed out and fell into a deep sleep. After all, he had just proven himself worthy of wielding his parents' magic. Uzumaki residence. I still think that you two went overboard. Naruto said to his parents as all three of them were in bandages and sitting down in the living room of their house. It had been a week since Minato and Kushina tested Naruto in Iron Rock Canyon, and the parents of the Dragon Slayer could not be any happier. Their son had grown into a powerful mage and could hold his own against the likes of them for over 3 hours and still have at least some energy left. That kind of thing was unheard of for a normal mage to do. It was also because of that they now had proof that he could, as Kushina now had one big slash mark across her shoulder from one of Naruto's attacks, and Minato had an energy burn mark on his stomach. They could not be any prouder of their son. We know we went overboard, but we had to. Kushina told her son as she had multiple bandages on her torso and shoulders, with some along her arms as well. We needed to know how strong you were without your Dragon Slayer magic and to make sure that you can handle strong opponents like us. I don't think there will be anyone else like you or Two-chan in Earthland. Naruto said deadpan. That may be true, but still. Kushina left her statement lingering as Naruto rolled his eyes at his mother and received a smack from the redeed. What have I told you about rolling your eyes at me? Sorry. Naruto whimpered as he nursed his head. All Minato could do was chuckle at the scene. He had bandages over his stomach and his left shoulder, as well as on his arms. I do hope I'm not interrupting anything. Raijin's voice sounded from inside their heads. Raiwasan. Where are you? Naruto asked his dragon mentor. Me and Beniham are on our way back from our little vacation. I trust that you passed your parents' test. Yes, he did, Raijin-sama, with flying colors. Minato said proudly. Good, that is good. When we return you will take our test to see if you're ready. Raijin said. What? Can't I rest up? Naruto asked. No, as a dragon slayer you must be ready for anything, even if you are injured or exhausted. So be ready, we'll be back in 2 days. Raijin said as he cut the connection, and Naruto groaned. Why me? 2 days later, Iron Rock Canyon, what's left of it? Why me? Naruto shouted as he dodged a large claw from an angry dragon god. Watch it. There is no watch it here, Naruto, this is a test. So pay attention. Raijin as he raised his fist again and smashed it down at the blonde who jumped up in the air. Dragon God's roar. Naruto shouted as he released a stream of rainbow flames with a beam in the middle of it. Raijin responded by unleashing a roar of his own. When both beams collided with one another, a huge explosion occurred and surrounded the two in its radiant light. From the sidelines a good distance away, Kushina, Minato and Beniham watched the two divine-powered beings clash and shielded their eyes from the light emitted. I still can't believe how powerful Naruto is when using Dragon Slayer magic, it's like he on a whole other level compared to when he uses our magic. Minato commented as the light started to die down. Naruto stood his ground against the dragon god as Raijin rushed at him and swung his tail at the blonde as Naruto caught it with all his strength and skidded back a couple of meters. He then let out a roar and with all the strength he could muster, he started to pull the dragon's tail and lifted the first Dragon King into the air. Raijin was surprised slightly by the strength that his student possessed but got over it quickly and flapped his wings to adjust himself in the air and looked down to see Naruto had disappeared. Where is he? Raijin thought as he looked around for the blonde before he felt magical energy above him and looked up to see Naruto descending towards him with his hands covered in the rainbow fire and leaving a trail behind him. Dragon God's holy wing slash. Naruto shouted as he moved his arms in a circular fashion and sent the wave of flames towards the airborne dragon. Raijin just opened his mouth and ate the attack whole. What? The blonde shouted. That's not bad, Naruto, the flames were a little plain though. Don't comment on my attack like it was a dish at a restaurant. Screw you. Naruto shouted as he propelled himself towards the dragon with his flames and punched him straight in his scaly jaw. Raijin was sent flying towards the ground for a couple of seconds before he straightened up and looked at Naruto with a smirk. Is that the best you got? Hatchlings can do a better job than that. Raijin commented as Naruto shook off the shock of Raijin actually smirking and gained a look of rage. Music Fairy Tail Lost Dragon Force theme. Oh yeah, well can a hatchling do this? Naruto shouted as he was surrounded in the rainbow flames and let out a terrifying roar as his body started to change. His already sharp canines became further elongated and sharper and gained a scale-like patterns, his visible skin. Everyone watching felt his magical energy start to skyrocket and watched in fascination as the flames spread out and take the form of a dragon. Minato and Kushina could barely make out a visage of Raijin in the flames. He can enter Dragon Force that quickly and with such ease as well. Raijin thought in shock as Naruto stopped roaring and looked towards Raijin with his now dragon-like blue eyes with slits in them. "Let's get wild," Naruto said with a grin as he rushed towards the dragon god, intent on winning this fight. Raijin watched as Naruto came at him at blinding speeds and readied himself for battle. Naruto collided with the dragon god as they both pushed against each other for dominance before Naruto let out a roar and pushed Raijin back. The dragon god watched in shock as he was being pushed back by his apprentice and flapped his wings harder to gain the ground he had lost. They eventually separated as they were both launched back into the canyon below from the other's magical energy and landed with a large crash and made new craters in the canyon. You can't really call it a canyon now, can you? Phoenix Lord nope. Naruto got up with a groan as he shook off the debris that was on him and made a powerful jump back into the crater. Damn it, where did that dumb dragon go? Naruto asked no one in particular. Dumb dragon? The angry voice of Raijin said from above Naruto as he looked up and saw the dragon god with a claw raised in the air and brought it down with a growl. Ah. Naruto coughed up blood as Raijin pinned him to the ground and was struggling to get out. Damn. My injuries still haven't healed yet. I couldn't move in time. Naruto thought as Raijin put more pressure on and Naruto grunted in pain. Is that all you got, hatchling? I'm disappointed. Raijin said as Naruto growled at him. Wow, don't you think Raijin-sama is being a bit harsh? Kushina said as they all heard what the dragon god said. He's trying to push Naruto to the edge and see if he is worthy of using his magic just like every dragon that has trained him. He must prove himself both physically and mentally, he must not let his anger or dark thoughts get the better of him. Beniham said as she looked at the battle between gods with a worried face. Back with Naruto, he growled and pushed Raijin's claw back with all his strength but failed as the dragon put more force on it. Naruto closed his eyes and breathed in and out to calm himself down and think of a way out of the situation. Snapping his eyes open, Naruto placed a palm on the ground as he surrounded it with magic and blasted the ground beneath him. Raijin slightly lost his balance as his right claw sunk into the ground and shifted his weight around his body. Naruto launched out of the ground and sent both him and the dragon into the air as he is once again shrouded in his magical aura. Raijin flew away from Naruto as the blonde remained in the air because of his aura and breathed in deeply. Naruto puffed out his chest as he appeared to eat some of the aura around him. Dragon God's holy roar. Naruto let out his roar as Raijin did and the two attacks clashed again as they held steady before they both stopped and looked at each other. The blonde flew towards the dragon god as Raijin flew upwards and he followed. They both flew up for a minute before Raijin stopped and looked down towards Naruto and covered his wings in magic and sent a gust of magic wind towards the blonde as it collided with him. Raijin narrowed his eyes as he saw a cloud of energy block his sight before Naruto flew out at him and hit him in the chest. Before Raijin could be sent flying backwards, Naruto grabbed a hold of him and threw him towards the ground with all the strength he could muster. The Dragon Slayer watched as a new crater formed and raised his arms in the air. Time to finish this. Dragon Slayer's secret art. The aura around Naruto started to move and form a large disc above his head and the winds around him became wild. As the disc became complete, it began to shrink until it was the size of a dinner plate. He pointed down at Raijin as the dragon god looked just in time to see the technique and widened his eyes when the white magic circle appeared. Divine light. Celestial shower. Naruto shouted as the disc spun and released numerous beams of magic and rained down upon Raijin like meteors. Multiple large explosions erupted from the area that the dragon god was in and covered it in dust and rubble as Naruto slowly made his descent towards the ground and landed at edge of the destruction. Naruto immediately got on one knee and started panting as the aura around his blew off in the wind and looked towards where his teacher and dragon parent was. He slowly got up and continued to breathe deeply as he took a step forward into the dust cloud, but before he could take another step, he felt the air around him shift and blacked out as he saw a large rainbow-colored tail heading straight for him. End song. An unconscious Naruto was flung across the crater before he skidded to a halt and lay on the ground. The dust cloud settled down and Raijin could be seen with multiple cuts and bruises all over his body as blood ran down his face and chest as he looked towards his apprentice. That last attack was a strong one. If I hadn't used my magic to block most of that attack, I might have been out of it for weeks. Not to mention that he went into Dragon Force when this fight started and continued to enter it throughout. He has grown stronger than I could have imagined, but unfortunately he is still not strong enough to defeat Aknologia. Raijin thought as he walked over towards Naruto's form and gently picked him up. He might not have beaten him, but he has proven that he is a true dragon slayer in his eyes. 2 weeks later. Standing near the house where he grew up in, a place that he had known all his life, and the place where he first unlocked and learned magic, Naruto felt saddened that he had to leave this place, but at the same time he was excited. He knew this day would come and had prepared for it for months, but to actually experience almost immediately after waking up was hard for the blonde, and everyone knew it. Naruto packed the last of his things in a bag and strapped it to his back as he looked at his family in front of him. His two human parents and dragon parents. Well, I have learned a lot under your teachings, Tu-chan, Ka-chan and Ryu-asan, Benham. Thank you for everything. The blonde said as he bowed towards his teachers. They all looked at him with happy faces despite what was happening as Kushina walked over to him and hugged him. There's no need for that, we would have happily taught you regardless. She said as Naruto nodded and hugged his mother back. Minato took the opportunity to walk over and ruffle his son's hair. Now then, before you leave, we all have some gifts for you as both a farewell and a birthday gift since you won't be here. Minato said as he raised his hand and summoned a magic stave. It had a normal-looking handle with a metal tip at the end and a blue lacrima at the other end, surrounded by a metal ring around it and one over it. It also had two metal weights on either side. Look up Sir Aaron's staff from Pokemon. This is the same magic stave my father gave me before he died. It's been passed down our family for generations and is said to be able to control magic in its purest form, just like our energy make. Now it is time to pass it down to you. Minato handed the stave over to his son as Naruto accepted the gift and held it for a moment. He could feel the power inside of it and could somehow feel his body getting lighter for some reason. Thank you Tu-chan, I will keep it safe. Naruto said as he smiled at his father. Kushina was up next as she held her hand up and summoned Crimson Blossom in a black decorated sheath and handed it over to Naruto. Naruto, this sword, this gift, is the only thing I have left of my old family. My mother gave this sword to me as a gift before I left my old village for Tree Village, and now I'm giving it to you. Kushina said as Naruto held his hands up and looked at her in shock. I can't take this from you, you always said that this was your personal treasure. Kushina smiled at him and ruffled his hair, much to his annoyance. This is not the only treasure I have in this world. I also have you. I want you to look after this and find a nice home for it, okay? She smiled as Naruto slowly stretched his arm out to take his mother's sword. After inspecting his parents' gifts, he placed them into his personal requip space and hugged both of them and thanked them. When he let them go, he turned towards Raijin and Benham and smiled at them. Do you two have anything for me? He asked. No. Raijin said bluntly as Naruto's face vaulted. Benham whacked Raijin across the back of his head with her tail and slightly glared at the dragon god. Don't be like that, of course we have something for you, Naruto. The dragon goddess said as Raijin grumbled under his breath before standing up straight. Naruto, as you know, the more you use your dragon slaying magic, the more you will slowly transform into a dragon, and with the magic you are using, it will happen a lot sooner than it normally would. The dragon god said with a serious voice. There are different ways to prevent the full transformation, and Benham and I have one way. What is it? To put it bluntly, we will inject you with our dragon blood that will create the antibodies for the dragonification. Benham said. The Uzumaki Namika's family looked at the dragons with wide eyes. But wouldn't having dragon blood in him change him? Minato said, surprised and worried about the whole thing. Slightly, yes, he will gain small traits like claws, scales, all the traits of the Dragon Force states will be increased. But that will only be when he uses Dragon Force with his God Dragon Slayer magic. Until then he will remain normal. And what happens after the uses Dragon Force? Kushina asked Raijin. I don't know, he will either go back to his human form or keep the dragon traits. We don't know for sure. Raijin said, not helping Minato and Kushina's minds about the whole thing. But. I accept. Naruto said as his parents looked at him in shock. I don't care if that blood turns me into a dragon or some kind of hybrid, as long as I can protect those precious to me I will take it. He said with determination in his voice. The group of caregivers all looked at him with pride in their eyes at what the young blonde said and knew that they raised him well. Naruto then smiled and finished. Besides, if Benham and Ryu-asan give me their blood, it means that they will also relate it to me as well, nah. The group blinked at him and thought over what he said and laughed with mirth. I suppose you are right, Naruto-kun. Benham smiled as she looked at Naruto. Having you being both my student and son. Very nice. I did not think of it like that. Raijin said with a claw on his chin. He then looked at Naruto with a serious look. If you are sure about going through with this, we will do the ritual now. Sure thing. Naruto said before looking towards his parents. I know you might not want this, but I do, with the friends I made in my little time in Earthland, I don't want what happened to you two to happen to them. You understand, right? Neither Minato and Kushina answered right away as they mulled things over in their minds. Kushina's mind was set on refusing to Naruto's answer, Minato's mind however was thinking differently. His son did have a point about him protecting his friends on the outside, and the blood could make him stronger than he already was. After thinking a bit more and whispering to Kushina about the idea, they both agreed and gave the dragons the signal to go. Naruto smiled at them before he walked up to the two dragons and sat on the ground in a lotus position and listened as Raijin told him how the ritual went. After Raijin finished his explanation, he looked towards Benihim and nodded as both of them closed their eyes in concentration, and a rainbow magic circle appeared below the three of them. All three of their bodies glowed with Naruto and Raijin's being rainbow colored and Benihim's being red, while the two dragons raised their claws and bit down on their arms. They made no movement of pain whatsoever. Minato and Kushina watched as small drops of the dragon's blood flowed out of the wounds and moved to circle around Naruto as the blonde dragon slayer breathed in deeply and bit into his right arm like the dragons did but winced a little bit. He then held his arm out as the dragon's blood slowly stopped spinning around him and moved towards his wound. He winced in pain and bit his lip as he felt the blood enter his veins as his arm felt like it was burning before it spread throughout his whole body. A few minutes passed before Naruto stopped wincing in pain and slowly stood up as the magic circle beneath him disappeared and his family moved closer to check on him. Kushina rushed over to him first as she checked him over for any dragon part and sighed in relief as she spotted none. After a few more minutes of checking over him and making sure that he had everything packed, it was time for Naruto to say goodbye to his whole family. I guess that this is goodbye for now. I will come visit you guys whenever I can, so don't miss me too much, he said with a smirk. Behind him was what seemed like a rip in space as the air around it was sucked in. Don't worry about his son, just make sure that you show the world who you are and that you are not to be messed with, Minato said as Kushina nodded next to him. And make sure that you give us plenty of little drakes to play with, Benihim said with playfulness in her voice as Kushina agreed with her. Naruto blushed at that and promised to do so in a couple of years after he turned 30. Naruto, I know that you want to fulfill your promise to defeat Acnologia for me, but I want you to grow up with your friends before you do so. There's no need to rush this, Raijin said as Naruto nodded. I will, and when the time does come when I battle Acnologia, I will not let you down. That's my promise of a lifetime. Raijin smiled with pride at what his new son said and nodded at him. I know that you will, just be safe until then. Well, here I go, Naruto said as he walked towards the rift, but now before looking back at his family and let a few tears out as he jumped in and disappeared. Be safe, my little Naru-chan, Kushina whispered out as Minato put his arm around her and gave her comfort. After all, he knew that he will be okay, they raised him after all. Earthland Year Act 778 Magnolia. Naruto had been in Earthland for a couple of months after he had permanently left the Dragon Realm and found out that it had been about a year since he had last been here and couldn't have been happier. He had done the first couple of months doing the odd mission every now and again, from escorting people to eliminating Dark's guilds scattered across the continent. Now, however, a 13-year-old looking Naruto was walking down the streets of Magnolia in his normal attire, without his arm and shin guards, underneath his white cloak and headband, on his way to the guild he had promised to join a year ago. Fairy Tail. After walking around and asking for directions from the townspeople, Naruto had made it to the guild building and marveled at the size and design of it. It was definitely an impressive building, and by the looks of it, it was really old too. Naruto let out a sigh as he placed a hand on the handle of the front doors and cleared his nervousness. Let's do this. He opened the guild door and stepped into the building and watched as his world went back as he was hit in the face with a brick. What the hell? 1. Loboman from Digimon Frontier. Naruto's armors will be based on a few of the male warriors from the show. 2. Yes, Minato can use the Amaterasu formula and Naruto cannot. Did not want Naruto to have it on top of what he already has. This was the spell Hades used on Luxas during their fight. 3. Hashirama's Sage Art Wood style technique he used against Madara and Kurama clad in Susanoo. And when they use stronger techniques, the energy mage changes to gold. Done. Finished. Hope you like it. I know I seem like a for ending it here, but I don't care. Sorry if the chapter and fight seemed a bit rushed, I wanted to get this done and dusted quick and didn't want them to be multiple chapters long. Also, my laptop is broken, so I need to get a new one, and that will take a while, so no new chapters for my other stories until then. Little update for all those who are wondering. Earthland Year Act 778 Magnolia. Naruto had been in Earthland for a couple of months after he had permanently left the Dragon Realm and found out that it had been about a year since he had last been here and couldn't have been happier. He had done the first couple of months doing the odd mission every now and again, from escorting people to eliminating dark guilds scattered across the continent. Now, however, a 13-year-old looking Naruto was walking down the streets of Magnolia in his normal attire, without his arm and shin guards, underneath his white cloak and headband, on his way to the guild he had promised to join a year ago. Fairy Tail. After walking around and asking for directions from the townspeople, Naruto had made it to the guild building and marveled at the size and design of it. It was definitely an impressive building, and by the looks of it, it was really old too. Naruto let out a sigh as he placed a hand on the handle of the front doors and cleared his nervousness. Let's do this. He opened the guild door and stepped into the building and watched as his world went back as he was hit in the face with a brick. What the hell? Chapter 5. Fairy Tail Guild Infirmary. A headache. That was the first thing that Naruto felt when he started wake up in an unknown room. He placed a hand to his head and started to massage it in order to make the pain go away, but it would not. Sitting up, Naruto noticed that he was still wearing his cloak, but his headband was gone and that he was in an infirmary of some kind. Ugh. What happened to me? Naruto asked. He heard the door open and he turned and saw a familiar blue-haired boy walk into the room. When the boy saw that Naruto was awake and smiled. Well, it is good to see you up, Naruto, and it is good to see you again. J-Gel. Is that you? Naruto asked as he sat on the edge of the bed. What are you doing here? Yeah, it is me and I am a member of Fairy Tail. Gel said, showing Naruto his fairy tail mark on his lower left abdomen. Naruto was surprised at this and asked, that's right, I was on my way to Fairy Tail. What about the others? Urza and Angel are out in town for the moment, said something about shopping, they don't know that you're here yet. Eric is outside in the hallway right now talking to the master. You took quite the hit there. Gel said as Naruto grabbed his head again. Yeah, what happened? All I remember was walking into the guild and then I saw something flying at me. Naruto said as Gel gained a sweat drop. Well, what happened was. Flashback not too long ago. Fairy Tail. The supposed strongest guild in Fiori. The guild hall stood proud in the city of Magnolia, a large 2-story high building with a large board that said Fairy Tail above the front door. That's what it looks like from the outside, inside however. I'm gonna beat the crap out of you, perv. A young pink-haired boy shouted as flames came out of his mouth. He was wearing a red sleeve shirt, baggy orange shorts, you can try Flame Brain. A black-haired boy replied as cold mist came off of his hands. He was wearing nothing but boxers. Droopy eyes. Ash head. Pervert. Scale face. Those two are at it again. Was the same thought going through the head over every member of the guild at that moment. It was a usual day in the Fairy Tail Guild as two boys named Natsu and Gray were fighting with each other and throwing stuff around, making a mess of the entire guild hall. Man, where's Urza when you need her? Eric said as he sat on a table with Gel opposite him. He had changed a lot during his time at the guild. His skin had become tanned and his hair was spiky, with a tuft covering his forehead and 2 bangs framing his face, and purple slit pupil eyes from him becoming a dragon slayer. His outfit consists of a whitish jacket with purple inner lining and a high collar. Under it, Cobra wore a dark shirt and he also sports a pair of crimson pants held up by a belt with simple brown shoes. Shopping in town, no doubt buying cake again. She has gotten a serious sweet tooth nowadays. Gel said as he tilted his head to the side as a potted plant flew by. But this has to stop soon, if they're not careful when Urza and Angel walk in they might hit them, or worse, Gel himself was wearing a white shirt with a blue tint under a hooded dark blue coat with light blue edges, 2 strings with shield-shaped pendants hanging down from the hood, and a prominent golden fairy tail symbol on the left part of the chest, plus simple, loose. Dark pants tucked inside laced boots. Fit their sweets? Eric asked with a raised eyebrow as he ducked down, dodging a rubber chicken in the process. Yep. I'm gonna get you this time, stripper. Natsu yelled as he threw a brick. Gray dodged the brick with a smirk on his face. Nice throw, loser, I bet you can't hit anyone with that. Ugh. Everyone in the guild stopped what they were doing and turned towards the entrance to see the brick that Natsu threw had hit someone in the face at the entrance. All they could see was that he had spiky blonde hair and wore a white cloak. As the brick slowly made its way off, the people could see his face better, despite it having a red rectangle mark on it, and saw he also had a headband on. They watched as he swayed back and forth for a moment before falling backwards onto the floor. Oops. Oops. Oops, you hit someone in the face with a brick, you idiot. Shouted everyone. 2 of the older mages walked up to the blonde and checked to see if he was alright. Is he still breathing? Natsu asked. Yeah, he's still alive, just knocked out by that brick you threw at him, Natsu. One of the mages named Wakaba said, smoking a cigarette. Natsu sighed in relief as he didn't kill the blonde and walked over to him. Who is he? I've never seen him before. Maybe he wants to join. The other mage named Mikao said. After what just happened to him, I don't think so. Wakaba said in response. As the older mages talked between themselves, Eric and Jello made their way towards the downed blonde and recognized him right away. Hey, isn't that Naruto? Eric asked as everyone was focused on them. Do you two know this guy? Gray asked. We met him a year ago with Urza and Angel, we helped him with a request he was on and he gave us our magic. When he left he said he would join us in Fairy Tail when he had completed his training, seems like he did. Jello explained as Eric poked Naruto. Man, he's really out cold. Hard to believe he's stronger than Urza and Murahin. What? What do you mean this guy's is stronger than those two? That's impossible. Natsu shouted. Well it is, so get used to it. Eric said with a smirk. He then lifted Naruto off the ground and put one arm over his shoulder and started carrying him. I'm going to take him to the infirmary until he wakes up. You coming, Jello? Yeah, be right with you. Jello said as he followed the poison dragon slayer to the infirmary. And after Eric brought you here we waited until you came too. You were only out for about 15 minutes, any other questions? Jello asked. Naruto looked at the teen with a straight face. Someone threw a brick at me. Natsu didn't do it intentionally, it was a mistake. Someone threw a brick at me. Naruto said raising his voice slightly. Well, I see that our guest is wide awake. A voice spoke up as Naruto and Jello turned towards the door to see Eric with an extremely old man. He wore a white shirt with black fairy tale stamp in the middle, which covered by an orange hoodie, matching orange shorts and an orange and blue stripes designed jester hat. Master? Jello said with a smile. Master? Naruto said with a raised eyebrow as he looked at the old man. Yes, my name's Makarov Dreyer, third master of Fairy Tail. Nice to meet you. Makarov said as he smiled at the boy. Makarov. As in the wizard saint. I've heard about you before. It's an honor to meet you. Naruto said as he stood up and bowed towards the man. There's no need to bow my boy, I'm just an old man who was given a mere title by the council. Nothing more, nothing less. Makarov waved off the boy's words and looked at him. I must say though I was looking forwards to meeting you. I heard about what you did a year ago, and I am grateful to you for not only saving all those people, but for saving my old friend Rob as well. For that I thank you. Naruto blushed slightly at the praising Makarov gave and rubbed the back of his head. It was nothing, really. Nothing. You saved an old teammate of mine and saved many children from dealing with that tower. You were able to save future members of the guild. Said Makarov with a big smile. Now then, I would ask why you came here, but I have a feeling I know the answer already. That's right. Naruto said. Master Makarov, can I please join Fairy Tail? Well of course you can my boy, anyone who wants to join is welcome. Makarov said with joy. Eric and Jello smiled as Naruto nodded. Now then, where would you like your guild mark to be, and what color? Can I have it in white with a black border? Naruto asked as Makarov smiled. Okay I want it right here. He then took off his cloak and lifted up his shirt and pointed towards the middle of his chest. Makarov raised an eyebrow as he looked at the boy's physique, it looked like he had more muscles than a boy his age should have and had more training as well. He could tell that Naruto was strong and that he was suppressing a large amount of his magical energy as well. He put that at the back of his mind for another time and stamped Naruto and made him an official member of Fairy Tail. Naruto felt something for a second when the mark was put on him, but thought nothing of it and smiled. I have some paperwork for you to fill out later, but for now let us go outside and introduce yourself to everyone. Makarov said as all four of them left the room and into the guild hall. Outside everyone was talking to each other about Naruto and what he was doing here when they all saw him come out without his cloak on with Eric, Jello and Makarov. The master jumped onto a nearby table and cleared his throat. Listen up everyone, as you can all see our guest is quite alright and now I would happily like to introduce you all to the newest member of our guild. Makarov gestured to Naruto as the blonde nodded and stepped forward. I'm Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, some of you may know me as the White Flash. I hope we all get along well. Naruto said with a smile. All of the older members of the guild had wide eyes when they heard his moniker. Over the years of doing request as a wandering mage Naruto had made a name for himself because of his use of teleportation magic, which would leave a flash of white when he teleported and because he would finish the requests in record time. He was happy with it since his father held a similar title as the Yellow Flash and was another way to know that he was connected to him. One person who was the most shocked however was Makarov when he had heard Naruto's last names. The same names as his old friends and fellow Wizard Saint members Minato and Kushina, and he even had the same moniker as Minato. He needed to have a talk with the boy sooner than he thought. Well said Naruto, now let's party for our newest member. Makarov shouted after clearing the thoughts out of his head. The whole guild went into a loud cheer as everyone started to party as Naruto smiled when he saw them acting this way. Seems like Rob was right after all. XXXXXXXXXX. A while later after Naruto had introduced himself, Eric and Jello had pulled him over towards a table filled with kids around his own age. Hey guys, what are you all doing? Jello asked as the three of them walked up to the table. Nothing much, what are you two doing here with the new guy? A brown-haired girl wearing a simple orange dress with string straps asked. We thought that it would be great if you guys introduced yourselves to Naruto since he doesn't have many friends. Eric said before Naruto hit him over the head. Eric. What? That seems like fun. A young white-haired girl with blue eyes said. She wore a simple pink dress paired with dark red shoes. My name's Lysana Strauss, it's nice to meet you. I'll go next. I'm Kana Alberona, pleasure to meet you Naruto-kun. Kana said as she raised a cup to him. Me, I'm next. My name's Natsu Dragneel and I challenge you to a fight. Natsu proclaimed as his fist was covered in flames. Naruto widened his eyes as he felt the familiar sensation of dragon-slaying magic coming off of the flame. Natsu was stopped however, when Eric grabbed Natsu by his scarf and lifted him in the air. No way Natsu, he'll completely destroy you. He said with a smirk as Natsu waved his arms and legs around. Don't mind the flame brain there, he's always like that. Gray Fullbuster. Gray held his hand out as Naruto shook it. Nice to meet you, though why are you in your underwear? Naruto asked as the boy looked down and started freaking out. My name's Elfman Strauss, it's nice to meet you Naruto-san. A white-haired boy said wearing a blue suit over a white shirt with a red papillon around the neck and polished dark shoes. Strauss. Are you Lysana's brother then? Naruto asked as Elfman nodded. Yep, Lysana is my younger sister, but I'm the middle child of my family. Elfman said. So you have an older sibling? Yep, Mirani is our older sister, but she's out at the moment. Elfman said as Naruto nodded and looked at the last girl at the table. She had shoulder-length blue hair and had a yellow shirt with brown pants and sandals. And who might you be? Naruto asked as the girl smiled at him. Hello, my name's Levi McGarden. It's a pleasure. Levi said before introducing Naruto to two boys behind he called Jet and Droy. She explained that together they were called Team Shadow Gear. Let me go already Cobra. I want to fight him. Natsu shouted as Naruto looked towards Eric. Cobra? Naruto said with mirth. Don't ask. Eric said with a sigh. Why on earth do you have to fight with every new member who joins the guild? But you said that this guy is stronger than Urza and Mira. I want to see if it's true for myself. Natsu said as he continued to move frantically. Who's stronger than me Natsu? An eerie voice spoke up from behind the pair as Natsu and Eric screamed like little girls and held each other as they looked at the person behind them. Standing there was a girl with white hair that was held up with a bark ribbon and had blue eyes that looked at the pair with something that would be close to anger. She dressed in a punk gothic style clothing that consisted of a black tank top, black shorts and thigh-high boots with stiletto heels. Murahin. The two said in fear. Naruto raised an eyebrow as he looked at the white-haired girl and the boy's reaction at her presence. How strong was she? Mirani, when did you come back? Lysana asked as she and Elfman walked over to their sister. Just now actually, but what Natsu said caught my interest. What were you saying before? Who do you think is stronger than me? Murahin said as she cracked her knuckles. I think they are talking about me. Naruto spoke up as Murahin looked at him. You must be Lysana and Elfman's older sister. I'm Naruto, I just joined today. A newbie huh? Murahin said as she looked at the blonde. Yes, I'm a new member, I hope that we get along well. Naruto said a bit annoyed that the white-haired girl called him a newbie. As much as I want to get to know all of you better I still have to find a place to stay, so I'll see all of you tomorrow okay? Naruto said before leaving the guild. A while later. That sure took a while. Naruto commented as he walked down the streets of Magnolia. He had been spending most of the day looking at apartments for him and had finally found one that would suit him well for now. Now that I've found an apartment it's time for some food. Naruto walked down the streets of Magnolia until he heard an argument from a store not far from him and went to check it out. When he got there he was treated to the sight of two familiar-looking girls arguing with each other in front of a bakery and looked at them with an amused smirk. The first girl he easily recognized as Urza Scarlet. Her flowing red hair could be spotted out in the crowd and her chocolate brown eyes, which were looking at the other girl with annoyance and what looked like a bit of playful anger in them as well. She was wearing armor on the upper part of her body, a skirt that was held up by a brown belt and had a sword strapped to her waist, black leggings and brown shoes. The other girl had pale skin, brown eyes and short silvery hair, with bangs covering her forehead. She wore a dress which had white frills on the skirt and on the collar, a dark short-sleeved blouse over the top of her dress, a light bow tied around her collar that fell upon her chest, and ribbons in her hair. She had light-colored hair that reached just below her shoulders, the front portion was cut at about her nose level. Naruto recognized her as Serrano or Angel as she liked to be called. I told you already, cheesecake and soufflés are the best things in the world. Urza yelled at Angel as the girl stood her ground against her. And I told you that chocolate and brownies are the best. Why wouldn't you get that through your thick head? Angel shouted as Urza developed a tick mark. Because it's blasphemy. How can something as simple as chocolate and brownies be better than the elegant and mouthwatering flavors of cheesecakes and soufflés? Urza yelled as the girls butted heads. None of them noticed Naruto walking into the store with a smirk on his face. Fine. Then let's settle this then. Let's ask the shopkeeper what he think is the best is. Angel said with a smirk. Fine. Urza yelled as they both made their way inside, missing the blonde who had exited past them with a milkshake and plastic bag in hand. Urza and Angel rushed over to the counter and quickly blurted out. Old man, we would like one order of chocolate and brownies, cheesecakes and soufflés. The man blinked in shock and confusion as he stared at the girls and smiled sadly at them. I'm sorry Urza-chan, Angel-chan, but I'm afraid I'm all out of all of those things. What? They both shouted. Yes, a young lad just came in before and ordered the last of them, along with a milkshake for himself. You passed him on your way in just now. The man pointed to the entrance of the store. If you want some you will have to ask him. He has blonde hair and wore white, you can't miss him. Both the girls blinked at what the store owner said before looking towards the door and then towards each other. They bolted out the door in search for the person who took away their favorite foods. Naruto was happily sipping away at his Choco vanilla milkshake as he slowly made his way towards a nearby park while at the same time making sure that the two girls following him. Knowing that they were no doubt going after him for taking the sweets they hold so dear. As Naruto was walking, Urza and Angel had caught up with the blonde and were following him around until he had walked towards a nearby bench in the park and sat down. You two can come out now, I know you were following me from the bakery. Urza and Angel came out into the open. Who are you? And what have you done with our treats? Urza asked a teen in front of them as Naruto just sipped his milkshake. It had a minty aftertaste. The two fairy tale mages had a tick marks on their heads and were about to seriously hurt the boy in front of them until he spoke up. It has been 1 year since I helped you and saved everyone from that tower and you don't know who I am, Urza, Serrano. When they heard what he had said, they both stopped in their tracks and froze. They quickly went over what the teen said in their minds and got a better look at him. They noticed the tanned skin on his face and the familiar whisker marks on his cheeks, his golden blonde spiky hair and his blue eyes that made them feel calm in his presence. Their eyes widened as Naruto stopped drinking and grinned at them. It's been a while, UTWF. Naruto. The two girls rushed at him to give him a hug. You're here. Does that mean your training is done and are you going to join the guild? They asked the last part. Naruto just smiled and lifts up his shirt, the girls blushing at how built he was, and they saw the fairy tale guild mark on his chest, meaning that he had already joined. Yeah, I made a promise, didn't I? Oh, and here. Naruto said while handing over the bag in his hand. Which they took and gave him a smile in thanks. Naruto told them the story of what happened to him when he went to the guild, and the girls were angry and quietly planned to kill Natsu for what he did to the blonde. They kept talking for hours as Naruto told the girls about the jobs he took while he was in Earthland before he noticed that it was getting dark. Hey girls, it's getting pretty dark. I think we should call it a day. Yeah, it is getting late. We should make our way home, Angel. Urza said as the white-haired girl nodded. But Fairy Hills is so far away. We won't make it there before the sun sets. Angel complained. Urza put a hand on her chin and thought as she knew her friend was right. There was no way they would make it back before they would have to walk in the dark. Seeing that the girls were in a small bind, Naruto voiced up. Why don't you girls stay at my place tonight? The girls blink as they look toward Naruto as he started to rub the back of his head. I mean, you girls shouldn't be wandering around by yourselves this late and the apartment I just got is not far from here so you could both crash there. If you want to, I mean. Naruto said nervously as the girls thought he looked kind of cute doing that. They accepted Naruto's invitation to stay at his place and made their way towards the apartment while picking up some groceries on the way. When they got inside, Naruto showed them to the living room and went to make dinner. None of them had had anything proper to eat. As Naruto was in the kitchen preparing dinner, Angel and Urza were talking with each other. Well, Naruto has changed from when he saved us. Oh, he looks so handsome. Don't you agree? Angel started. Urza nods her head. Oh yes, he has grown very handsome indeed. He should become a supermodel. Urza said. I heard that. And I will not be posing for any photographers anytime soon. Naruto spoke up from the kitchen as the girls blushed as the teen had heard their conversation. But why not? The two girls complained to Naruto. Because I don't want the attention right now at least. Naruto whispered the last part to himself as brought out some ramen bowls. He set the bowls down in front of the girls as they raised an eyebrow at him. What? Ramen? Really? Urza said incredulously. Yeah, why would anyone eat this gross stuff? Angel asked. Naruto gasped and held his hand to his heart comically as he looked at the girls in shock and mock anger. How dare you? How dare you call the food of the gods gross? What you have said cannot be forgiven. Naruto shouted as the girls stared at him with blank expressions. Food of the gods? Yes. Naruto said. How can call a food food of the gods? It's so stupid. Angel said as she stirred some of the noodles around. Then what if I said that about those chocolates and brownies you like so much? Naruto asked with a smirk as the white-haired girl abruptly stood up and pointed at him. Do not compare something as creamy and delicious as chocolate and brownies to this stuff you call food. It's the food of the gods. The blonde dragon slayer said with mirth in his voice. The celestial spirit mage kept her mouth closed with a blush of embarrassment on her cheeks as she sat down and slowly ate away at the bowl of noodles in front of her as Naruto and Urza chuckled at her. So, Naruto-kun, what kind of training did you do while you were away? It must have been intense if finished it in just a year. Urza asked intrigued at what kind of training the blonde went through. She still remembered the week of training that the team made her and the rest of her friends go through and had to suppress a shiver at the memory. The training session that he made them do was pure hell, and he said that his teachers made him do even more when he was younger. Oh, my training. Well, Naruto trailed off as he didn't know what to say exactly. To him, his training lasted for about 4 years, but he couldn't tell the girls that or they might think he was mad, not to mention that he wanted to keep his parents alive and living in the dragon realm with beings that could be considered primordial gods a secret for as long as possible. It wasn't that bad. Yes, my teachers were a bit tough because I had to finish my training quickly, but it was worth it. Really? Beep. Now I can use my magic at a whole other level now. Naruto said happily as he sat down and started eating his own bowl of ramen. That reminds me, what magic can you use exactly? Angel asked with Urza nodding her head beside her. They both knew that the blonde could use dragon slayer magic as he taught Cobra when they last met and that he could use some kind of sword and cloning magic but knew nothing more than that. Well, I know different types of magic, but the main ones I use is a type of molding magic called energy make and sword make. Naruto said though eating his meal. Molding magic? Oh. Like Gray's. Urza exclaimed. Gray? I met him and some of your friends today at the guild, but I didn't get what magic they use. What can he make with his magic? Naruto asked, intrigued at the news of another molding mage in the guild. Gray uses ice make magic and can create anything out of it. It's so pretty. Angel said as she spread her arms open. Ice, huh? Interesting choice, wonder who taught him that. Naruto mumbled to himself as he quickly finished his bowl. Any of you want seconds? We haven't even finished our first bowl and you want more? Urza asked incredulously as Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I like ramen. Naruto said in defense as the girls laughed a little and Naruto smiled. They spent the remainder of the night talking about different things, Naruto's adventures before and after he met them, Urza and Angel's mission that they went on and the friendships they made with the members of the guild. They even said that Rob had gone to join the Magic Council some time after they arrived. After a long talk all of them decided to go to their respective bedrooms and Urza and Angel drifted off into a peaceful slumber. The only one up was Naruto as he looked up towards the ceiling and thought about his day so far. He had been knocked out by a 8-year-old with a brick no less, joined the guild that had the boy that knocked him out, meet some of the people that he saved from the tower, and made some new friends as well. Not a bad day. He might just like it at Fairy Tail. The next day Naruto found himself standing in the office of Master Makarov as the old man looked at him with a somewhat serious look on his face as he looked at the blonde. Naruto knew this was coming when the guild master had introduced himself to the blonde the other day and said Mage had heard Naruto's last name as well. It was still early in the morning because Makarov had sent him a message before the sun rose up bird and asked if he could see him about something important in his office right away. He left right away and left a note on the table for Urza and Angel for when they wake up. Naruto stood silently as the master looked him up and down as if he was comparing him with something before he let out a sigh and broke the silence between them. So then my boy, do you know why I might have called you here this morning? Makarov asked. I have to assume it has to do with my last name, or names if I have to be precise. Naruto said. Makarov nodded his head. Sigh, I knew this was coming. So, may I ask you, is that really your last name? And answer me truthfully my boy, this is an important and personal matter to me. Makarov said as he proved his point by letting out a small amount of his magic. Naruto had to hold back a flinch as he felt the master let out his energy and directed it towards him, even though he had more than the man in front of him. The man was still a wizard saint and had more experience than even his parents had. Yes they are. My parents were your fellow wizard saints and you friends Minato Namikaze and Kishina Uzumaki. I am their son. Naruto said. Makarov looked at the boy for a second before he stopped letting out his magical energy and sighed, slumping down in it. I see, so their child did survive. Makarov said before looking up to the teen. I knew your parents very well, they were the most heartwarming mages I have ever met. It was saddening to hear that they had died. Well they didn't actually die master, they're alive. Naruto said as Makarov looked at him in surprise. What do you mean? Makarov asked. Naruto walked up to a chair that was opposite of Makarov's desk and signaled if he could sit, which the master nodded. It's a long story master and one you might not like. Naruto said. Don't worry, I think I can take it. Makarov said. Naruto sighed and began telling the mage the story about his family and his life. He told him about how his parents were betrayed by the very village they had grown up in, all because they seek power by trying to go after Naruto himself. Not only because of his status as the son of two wizard saints and the leader and master of the village and guild, but also because he had a large amount of magical energy despite being an infant. He went on to tell the master of what happened to his parents and about how they, along with him, were transported to the dragon realm and about how he lived his whole life there. Makarov was angered to hear what happened to his friends and that it was the people of their own home who tried to kill them, their own friends and family. He would never do something like that to his children. He was pleased to hear though that Naruto was able to be raised by his parents and they loved and cared for him. Naruto then told Makarov about how his parents had met Raijin and Benihim and had agreed to let Naruto learn Dragon Slayer magic, which surprised Makarov now knowing that the guild now has 3 Dragon Slayers and had also learned his parents' magic along with some others that he had studied by himself. Makarov wondered how strong the boy was with the different types of magic the teen had under his belt, and with what he had heard from the kids, he would have finished his training if he was here. The blonde was turning out to be an interesting person indeed. I see. Makarov said when Naruto had finished his story. Well, that is an interesting story, Naruto, and I know that you were not lying about it one bit. I assume you want to keep this between us though? If it's not too much trouble, I still don't want the world to know who I truly am just yet, or for some people to know that the Dragon Eye Gem exists. I will wait until a couple of years or so until then I will just be Naruto. Naruto said, as the master nodded in understanding. If that is all, master, may I go? I still have to have breakfast. Naruto said. Makarov smiled and dismissed Naruto as the young mage left the room. Makarov sighed as he turned around and looked out the window of his office and saw the town of Magnolia as the sun's first light shined upon it. He had a feeling that things will be changing around here. For better or for worse he didn't know, but he did know that Fairy Tail will handle whatever challenges that present themselves and survive with the next generation. Sorry this took a while to write, please don't be mad with me. I hope you all like the chapter and Naruto's interaction with the guild members so far. I will have him interacting more in the next chapter and have his first mission, so stay tuned. What if Naruto learns Heavenly Dragon Slayer magic, and thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content then do consider subscribing to my channel and leave a like if you guys need the next part, comment down, and thanks for watching the video and see you guys next video.